And Project 2025 is pretty grim stuff, but there's a number of legislators who are, already putting into place some of its provisions, particularly at the state level. But here we've got Joe Manchin and Republican Senator John Barrasso, who, by the way, is linked to Project 2025. They are the chair and the ranking member of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Joe Manchin, whose family owns a coal company. He's a multi-millionaire because of his coal company. And in fact, he used his political clout years ago to keep open a coal plant that used the particular type of coal that his coal company sells so that his family could get rich. Anyhow, these two guys have introduced the Energy Permitting Reform Act of 2024, and it's right out of Project 2025. It quote, advocates, quote, limiting opportunities for communities to challenge projects, loosening oversight for drilling and mining projects, extending drilling permits, and fast-tracking liquid natural gas permits, and several other provisions friendly to fossil fuel giants, according to the National Resources Defense Council. These are nearly identical policies to what's proposed in Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation, they call it Unleashing All of America's Energy Reserves, and it includes ending federal restrictions on fossil fuel drilling in public lands, limiting investments in renewable energy, and rolling back environmental permitting restrictions for new oil, gas, and coal projects, including power plants. Manchin has been trying and failing to pass this kind of stuff for years. Brett Hartle, Director of Public Affairs at the Center for Biological Diversity, said that his, quote, Frankenstein legislation is taken straight from Project 2025, and it's the biggest giveaway in decades to the fossil fuel industry. He goes on to say the bill deprives communities of the power to defend themselves and gives that power to big oil by making it harder for communities to challenge polluting projects in court, and prioritizes the profits of coal barons, like Joe Manchin himself, over public health. He goes on to say Monday was the hottest day in recorded history. It's shocking that as the climate emergency continues to break records around us, the Senate continues to fast-track the fossil fuel expansion that is killing us. This dangerous bill does not deserve a floor vote. And indeed, the 4 hottest days ever were last week. Global temperatures spiked to their highest levels in recorded history on Monday. This is a week ago Monday. As that happened, ambulances were screaming through the city streets of Tokyo, carrying scores of people who had collapsed amid an unrelenting heat wave, right? Sarah Kaplan over at the Washington Post. A monster typhoon has emerged from the scorching waters of the Pacific Ocean. Thousands of vacationers fled the idyllic mountain town of Jasper, Canada, ahead of a fast-moving wall of wildfire flames. She writes, by the end of this week, which saw the 4 hottest days ever observed by scientists, we're talking last week, dozens had been killed in the raging floodwaters and massive mudslides triggered by Typhoon Gaime. Half of Jasper was reduced to ash, and about 3.6 billion people around the planet had endured temperatures that would have been exceedingly rare in a world without burning fossil fuels. Since last July, Earth's average temperature has been consistently 1.5 degrees or more above pre-industrial levels. What we're finding now is that because of this heat, forests are actually less able to pull carbon dioxide out of the air. Now that's called a negative feedback loop. This is where as the heat goes up, the ability to counter that heat goes down. I guess you could call that even a positive feedback loop, in that it's adding to the, and not a positive thing, a negative thing, but it's adding to the heat, right? Sea ice around Antarctica is at record lows. Coral bleaching became so extreme that scientists had to come up with a new scale for measuring it. And this is on the heels of 13 straight months of unprecedented temperatures. We got to do something about this. You know, Leo DiCaprio and I put together a video. You can find it over on YouTube. Just plug his name and my name into the YouTube search thing at the top, and it's the top thing that pops up. It's called Last Hours. And it's about what happens if we see a significant rise in ocean temperatures. I mean, the ocean temperatures around the Middle East, around Taiwan right now, are almost 3 degrees Celsius warmer than normal. That's radical. These are just extreme temperature shifts. And what we point out in the film, along with a number of the world's top climate scientists, is that during the PETM, the Permian Eocene thermal maximum. Now this was, I'd have to go back and look when this was. I'm sorry, I shouldn't quote the number of million years without knowing the exact number, but anyhow, this is not as far back as the Permian mass extinction, which was 249 million years ago. This was more like, something like 40, 50, 60 million years ago, something like that, maybe 100 and something. Again, look it up, fact check me. But during the PETM, there was a spike in global temperatures that seemed to have been a function of solar activity, actually, or changes in the Earth's orbit. And what happened was the oceans got warm enough. This is about a 5-degree spike. And the oceans got warm enough that these giant beds of frozen methane under the ocean that follow the continental shelves of all over the world, around all continents. This is where vegetation, seaweed, has died and rotted and converted itself into methane. This is what naturally happens when vegetable matter decomposes. It produces methane as methane gas as the consequence of that. And we call that natural gas. And these methane beds, they're called clathrates because it's methane that is frozen in water, in seawater. And so it's like a snow cone. It's like a slurry. And, I mean, literally, miles long, miles wide, multiple feet deep, hundreds of billions of tons of this stuff around the Earth. And if the water warms up to the point where this clathrate starts to, it's called dissociate, in other words, to melt and then just return from a solid state or a semi-liquid state back into a gaseous state, and then bubble out of the oceans into our atmosphere, then you see this sudden spike in temperature. And that sudden spike in temperature during the PETM killed something like 70 or 80% of all life on Earth. I mean, it just makes the planet uninhabitable for species like us. And of course, during the Permian mass extinction, it was even worse. That was a 95% killing off. They called it the great dying of all life on Earth. And that was caused, again, by the oceans warming up to the point where the clathrates, the methane clathrates, started to dissociate. This is referred to as the clathrate gun hypothesis. And it's very controversial. It's not 100% accepted by scientists. But there's a lot of speculation around it, and it's clearly a very, very much worst case scenario. It's not likely to happen, but it could happen, and it has happened in the past, or appears to be that it has happened in the past. So Project 2025, these fossil fuel billionaires, the fossil fuel multimillionaires like Joe Manchin, these people don't give a damn about the fate and future of the human race. They just want as much money as they can get, as quickly as they can get it, so that a liquid state back into a gaseous state, and then bubble out of the oceans into our atmosphere. Then you see this sudden spike in temperature. And that sudden spike in temperature during the PETM killed something like 70 or 80% of all life on Earth. I mean, it just makes the planet uninhabitable for species like us. And of course, during the Permian mass extinction, it was even worse. That was a 95% killing off. They called it the great dying of all life on Earth. And that was caused, again, by the oceans warming up to the point where the clathrates, the methane clathrates, started to dissociate. This is referred to as the clathrate gun hypothesis. And it's very controversial. It's not 100% accepted by scientists. But there's a lot of speculation around it, and it's clearly a very, very much worst case scenario. It's not likely to happen, but it could happen, and it has happened in the past, or appears to be that it has happened in the past. So Project 2025, these fossil fuel billionaires, the fossil fuel multimillionaires like Joe Manchin, these people don't give a damn about the fate and future of the human race. They just want as much money as they can get, as quickly as they can get it, so that they can live on their yachts and they can fly around in their private jets so they can build their mansion.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
Thom Hartmann Book Club. Today we're reading from Marooned, Jamestown Shipwreck and a New History of America's Origin by Joseph Kelly, published by Bloomsbury. This is from the introduction titled In the Beginning. A storm at sea, waves swelling higher than the ship's deck, and wind like an axe chopping off their caps and throwing water at the heavens. So much seawater in the air, it seems it will drown the lightning. The sky pours down stinking pitch, sulfurous smell, and thunder. A brave vessel full of noble creatures climbing the waves and sliding into the troughs, its seams barely holding together. So opened Shakespeare's Tempest in a cold London theater in the winter of 1611. It was a true story. To use today's common language, Shakespeare ripped this scene from the headlines. Only there were no headlines in 1611. Newspapers had not been invented. The first English language periodical, a weekly broadsheet, was printed 10 years later. Ironically enough, in Dutch-speaking Amsterdam. News of great events circulated the streets of England's towns in more entertaining, less dependable channels. Pamphlets, sermons, songs, notices posted in town squares, private letters passed from one reader to another. And rumor. Buzzing like the crowd noise preceding the play, a cacophonous, often contradictory sailors' stories seeped up from the docks of London, Southampton, and Plymouth. And plays, even those as fantastical as The Tempest, dramatized the rumors and publicized what was going on in the world. The story of storm, wreck, and redemption was the talk of England. Although a century had passed since Columbus first crossed the Atlantic, the open sea still preyed on the sailor's psyche in a way that coast-hugging Europeans had never felt. When a storm came on the Western Ocean, there was no chance of running to harbor. Voyagers were beyond the frontiers of civilization, encroaching on spaces unlit by Christianity, where dark forces reigned. Anything could happen. At the height of Shakespeare's play, a few noblemen come on deck, demanding to speak with the ship's master. "You mar our labor," the boatswain answers. "Keep your cabins. You do assist the storm." The words sound like revolution, at least on the surface. The seaman seems to be a leveler who favors meritocracy over aristocracy. "You are a counselor," the boatswain tells Gonzalo. "If you can command these elements to silence, use your authority. If you cannot, out of our way, I say." Gonzalo warns him, "Remember whom thou hast aboard." None None that I love more than myself, replies the sailor. What cares these roarers for the name of king? Such stuff might embolden the common sort to check their supposed betters. One might think so until it's remembered that the common sort was not in the audience's play. The Tempest premiered to the elegant, enclosed Blackfriars Theater. The more democratic and open-air Globe Theater was always crowded with groundlings who stood in the pit chewing their sausages. But tickets to the indoor, winterized Blackfriars Theater, they were pricier. London's aristocracy sat in their boxes dressed in finery, and the guildsmen and craftsmen and professionals, up to perhaps 1,000 patrons, filled the rest of the audience. Rich though they were as eager as any to see on stage what they'd heard in rumor, what had happened to the Sea Venture. The players wobble strut on the stage as if in the heaving and tossing deck of that ship, while the master and boatswain shout instructions into the noise of the wind. Take in the topsail. At all costs, they must keep steerage way. They catch just enough wind to point her bow into those rising seas. If a wave should take them broadside, it might roll the top-heavy ship until the mast kissed the water and she would not rise again. Lay her a hold, set her 2 courses off to sea again, lay her off. All labor for naught. The ship does not roll, but its very boards come apart, letting in the sea like a sieve. The scene ends with mariners flooding the stage, clothes dripping with salt water, crying in despair and fear. We split, we split. Farewell, my wife and children, the sailors wail. Farewell, brother. Elizabethan theater may have skimped on props and sets and special effects when judged by the standards of our own blockbuster action films. It had to rely on the words of the actors to paint the scene. As Shakespeare himself put it, the breath of those who watched the play must fill the ship's sails with wind. But Shakespeare's words, they whipped up gales in the minds of the viewers. The patrons quaked under the shock of thunder and lightning. A ship full of 150 souls split at sea in the midst of the most terrible storm, and yet every person lived. This was England's most shocking, unbelievable news. More than a year earlier, on the 15th of May, 1609, the Sea Venture set sail from London, the admiral of an impressive fleet. The Diamond, the Falcon, the Blessing, the Lion, and the Unity, as well as a Pinnace, a shallow draft boat designed for coastal exploration, too small to be named, sailed behind her, headed to Virginia, the third and by far largest resupply of 2-year-old fledgling Jamestown, England's tiny, rough-hewn, and hungry little campsite, its only toehold on the vast American continent. The flotilla was the largest and most expensive and most promising overseas expedition that England had ever organized, and 600 people crowded into the vessels would triple or quadruple the population of the colony. It seemed that all England applauded their departure. Crowds of London's ever-curious spectators, one historian explains, lined the river's banks and cheered as the 7 ships, sails billowing, flags flying, glided past them on the spring afternoon. Several weeks later, after a stop at Plymouth increased the fleet to 9 vessels, they left England's toe. The book Marooned by Joseph Kelly.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Monday. And, I've got a... Oh, really? Uh-oh. Yeah. Apparently we've got a buzz. We'll figure this out during the first break. But we got a lot to talk about today. I'm back from the DNC. We had a wild and wonderful time. And is that better, Sean? No? Okay. And we've got a lot. There's a lot of the news today. I want to get into this question, is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? We'll get to that in a few minutes. Also, are Republicans losing the culture war and now running against their own policies on immigration and abortion? Kind of looks like it. And is Trump going to bail on the debate? Is he afraid of prosecutor Harris? We'll talk about all that in the first hour of the program. In the second hour of the program, Gabriel Rosales is going to be with us from LULAC. The Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is literally sending police to kick in the doors of Hispanic voters and black voters, with this whole big lie election fraud thing. Basically, it's a massive intimidation strategy. How dare you register to vote is the essence of what's being said. And business people are busy trying to figure out which politicians to bribe now that the Supreme Court has legalized it. In the third hour of our program, our old buddy Greg Palast is going to drop by. He says, I was on the phone with RFK Jr. when he lost his mind. Did the worm get him? We'll talk about that. Also, an FBI informant's book is predicting far-right violence this fall. Should we be afraid? We'll talk about that. So, you know, a lot to get to today, a lot to talk about. My op-ed today over at HartmannReport.com is titled, "Is Othering Human Nature's Deadliest Instinct?" And this has to do with, what got me started on this was a new book. Rob Henderson's newsletter, in fact, turned me onto it. It's called The Goodness Paradox, The Strange Relationship Between Virtue and Violence in Human Evolution. It's by a guy named Richard Wrangham. And he does a deep dive into the past 600,000 years of human evolution. And, you know, says, you know, what's going on here? How did we end up so different from chimps? I mean, you know, in chimp society, you know, they're our closest immediate relatives. We share 97% of our DNA with them. In chimp society, violence is rampant. Chimps live, you know, a life very much like what Thomas Hobbes postulated would be, you know, everyone's. All right, that's the mic side is over here, not there. That's the earpiece side. And it's coming off right here, Nate. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So anyhow, this book, The Goodness Paradox, it really illuminated for me the dark side of identity politics. You know, identity politics can go two ways. On the Democratic side, by and large, identity politics is let's identify people who have traditionally been oppressed and try to lift them up and bring them in. Try to bring them into society. Try to strengthen our bonds with them. Try to help them out. On the Republican side of identity politics, it's a whole different thing. The Republican side of identity politics is let's identify people who look different than us or pray different than us or love different than us and demonize them. Identify them as the other. Now, back to the chimp society thing, what happened between chimps and us is that apparently around 600,000 years ago, our immediate predecessor species developed language, which brought language to us. And language then changed our relationship to violence. In chimp society, the most violent chimp runs the society, basically, has first pick of females, has first pick of food, you know, gets whatever he wants. He's the most violent, he's the dominator. But when we developed language, what Wrangham talks about is that we also developed gossip. We developed the ability to communicate with each other, and we realized that cooperation as a survival strategy is more important than domination. That cooperation is absolutely vital, in fact, in our society. And this led to early hunting-gathering societies literally killing alpha males who tried to rise up and dominate the society, or who tried to hoard what would be in a hunting-gathering society wealth, which was typically food. They literally killed these people, and for hundreds of thousands of years. And as a result, there's very few of us, like between 1% and 5% of us, who carry the gene, essentially, for psychopathy, for being psychopaths or sociopathy. That the vast majority of us are not psychopaths. It's only a very, very small percentage of us. And as a society, we, you know, and if you look at hunting-gathering societies to this day, and this is, you know, in his book, and I write about this in my new book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, you know, about the Native American connection, how our Constitution is largely based on Native American societies. Now, Native American societies at first contact that we discovered were largely peaceful. There were some that were having wars, but they were wars against, you know, other tribes. Within their own communities, though, they were highly democratic, small d democratic. So, you know, what this tells us is that, number one, we are wired differently from chimps. We are wired to be peaceful and loving toward our own group. But we can also be violent and killers, just brutal killers against people who are not part of our group once we believe them to be both an other and a threat. We use this. The military, for example, uses this. My dad, right straight out of high school in 1945, volunteered to go fight in World War II, and to his dying day, referred to Germans and Japanese people as Krauts and Japs, racial slurs essentially, because that was pounded into him in basic training. This is why you have these Gulf War veterans who come back and Middle Eastern war, from the George W. Bush's wars in the Middle East, Afghanistan and Iraq, who come back and talk about ragheads and use other kinds of racial slurs. Because in basic training, you have to convince these young men and women that the people they're going off to kill are both an other and a threat. And you have to essentially dehumanize them. And once you do that, you trigger this ancient part of our DNA that goes back to the chimps that allows us to kill. This is so deeply ingrained in us that it's the essence of all the Bruce Willis kind of movies, all these revenge movies that are so popular. Liam Neeson, Bruce Willis, we've all seen these movies. And, the bad guy gets killed, right? Or the bad guys get killed in the end. And by the end, as the bad guys are getting killed, we're all like cheering. Murder. That's wired into us. So here's the problem. While Democrats are practicing identity politics in a way that's trying to lift up minorities within America, and a kind of identity politics that eventually renders itself unnecessary, because once everybody's equal, you no longer need things like affirmative action. Whereas Republicans are using identity politics the way that they do in basic training, to identify an other and to claim that that other is a threat. Donald Trump, Mexicans are rapists and murderers, this kind of stuff. And what that does is it triggers that ancient part of our DNA that makes us capable of violence. It's why on January 6th, when Donald Trump identified Democrats as the others and Congress as the other, and sent thousands of his followers against Congress, they killed 5 people that day, and they killed 3 police officers over the next couple of days as a consequence of their experience there. 8 people died. Trump triggered murder. And they're trying to do it again. In the third hour, I'm going to be talking about this, the guy who infiltrated the Klan for the FBI, who is warning that, there might be some really serious times coming here. But anyhow, just an FYI, the article, and the way that we break this up, by the way, the way that we overcome the othering is by creating a giant us. And this is what we saw at the Democratic Convention. It's what I saw last week being there, is people of all different, colors and religions and disabilities and everything, just all together, a giant us. That blows up the other.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And that's the work we've got to do. I mean, the Republicans are really essentially forcing us into this, to fight back against this. I'll be right back. And welcome back. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, not too much, Tom. This is such an important topic, and I could talk about it forever, but I'm just going to try to hit the high points. You are 100% right, okay? And I worked for a guy when I was in Iraq who started, who I consider him a war criminal. But, I'm not the government. He's not, he's probably in the CIA right now. But anyways, he started noticing something, okay? When you're in an infantry squad, you actually, to get to the objective, they use a technique called double tapping. You actually have to kill people that you think are injured because, you're trying to get to the objective. Now, that's infantry. But here's what we noticed. In an occupation, a military occupation, there were non-infantry service members, men and women, that were in, pretty rigorous combat. All right, and they don't have those rules. So what he started noticing is there were too many warning shots. So as a colonel in the Army, he passed the law. You fire a warning shot, he's going to prosecute you, which he has the power to do.
In other words, you have
right?
to shoot to kill rather than shoot to warn.
Yes, you know, and this is where me and him had a big break. Well, anyways, they started bringing in, you know, of course, human terrain specialists, which are anthropologists and everything. And I started noticing something else with them, this concept of infantilizing, or because that's what I was accused of a lot. Okay, like every time I would hear this derogatory term, raghead or haji or, you know, sand, I would even hear the sand N-word. Okay, yeah. I mean, you know, this is the military. When I would hear this and bring this up, they would say, no, you are actually the racist. You're infantilizing. These are human beings, okay? They are, you know, they understand, you know. And, you know, I was like, well, how are we ever going to accomplish winning hearts and minds with this mentality, right? But anyways, right. I digress. You know, I brought it up to you when I said J.D. Vance did not say we were childless. He one-upped it. He said we being liberals, are anti-child.
Right.
Now, you see, that is what they accuse homosexuals of being, is child predators. You see, what they're doing is they're very meticulously and subtly it's just like the Nazis did during World War II, okay? The term Jew and whatever else were interchangeable. Communist, Jew and communist were commonly interchangeable.
Yeah, or not it's otherizing, excuse me.
Yeah, and it's otherizing. And even, okay, and before, you know, someone calls me a bleeding heart liberal and blah, 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 you mentioned Cincinnatus, the Roman guy that went back to the plow, right? The big civic virtue guy. Right. Well, one of his, he saved the Romans by eliminating the Aqui. The Aqui were a tribe on the eastern flank of Rome, and there's not much left of their culture. We don't know much. They were, you know, there's just a little bit of riding left. So, but anyways, you know, they were either eliminated by Cincinnatus or they were just, you know, assimilated. Whoever was left was assimilated. They were forcibly displaced from their land and was colonized by Romans. But my point is I heard it this weekend by a major that was on with Jake Tapper, who said the Hamas is doing the casualty statistics, and we can't listen to him. He told Jake Tapper, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. He was saying it's just a fact that Hamas and Muslims, by extension, lie about casualties.
Yeah, this is othering too. I get it. Dave, thanks for the call. 20 minutes past the hour. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Between 1920 and 1980, America went from the middle class being about 10 or 12% of us up to being over 60% of us. What drove that was high taxation. High tax rates. Woodrow Wilson had 91% income tax rate. Franklin Roosevelt, 90% top income tax rate. Lyndon Johnson dropped it down to 74%. But from that, throughout that entire period of time, with the exception of the Roaring 20s, this is a brief little 10-year period, 12-year period, the top income tax rate was in the neighborhood of 74 to 90%. And what that did was it caused really rich people to leave their money in their businesses and pay their workers well, and that produced the middle class. Reagan came along and dropped that top tax rate down to 25% and then 27%, and it's now in the 30s, and that's what killed the middle class. We need to bring back these high taxes. There's a whole article about it at HartmannReport.com. Will the morbidly rich ever go back to being good citizens? Check it out.
Is it written in our bones? This fear of the unknown, a shadow cast by ancient days. Love and hate collide in waves. We draw the lines, we build the walls. In every rise there's a fall. But what if we could see the light in every face, in every life? Is othering our deadliest law, a whisper from a primal law? Or can we rise above the fight and hold each other in the night?
Yeah, it is really written in our DNA. It really is.
So, are Republicans losing the culture wars? This is a fascinating question over at Politico. Julian Perez Jr. and Andrew Atterbury are asking this question. And this is a moment, apparently, where things are changing. Moms for Liberty, for example, the right-wing hate group, it's been identified by Southern Poverty Law Center as such, I believe. They had, quite a bit of success early on in 2022, 2023 in getting their, let's hate on gays, let's hate on blacks kind of folks in school boards, particularly their anti-trans, hysteria. And now they're losing these school board elections, particularly in Florida, which is where they started out. This is pretty remarkable. Meanwhile, and the Democrats are playing offense. The Democrats are now saying that these people are weird and that they are anti-American. And Democrats are openly denouncing book bans. And several of the Democratic committee speakers found ways to leverage social issues. For example, Tim Walz talked to, who's a former school teacher, talked about the law that he signed to provide free school lunches to everybody in the state of Minnesota. He said, and I quote, "We made sure that every kid in our state gets breakfast and lunch every day. So while other states were banning books from their schools, we were banishing hunger from ours." It's brilliant, right? And so Trump is going to have a fireside chat this Friday with the co-founder of Moms for Liberty in Washington, D.C. There's kind of a symbiotic relationship between this hate group and the Trump campaign, which makes perfect sense. But, well, actually, they've been labeled an anti-government extremist group. That's what the Southern Poverty Law Center called them. And they are blocking, they're part of this lawsuit to block the Biden administration from enforcing Title IX anti-discrimination regulations based on, gender identity in schools. But this is from Politico, 2 conservative-leaning candidates just lost their races in Florida's Indian River country, a Republican-dominated area where this co-founder of Moms for Liberty actually won a school board seat, including an incumbent who was appointed by DeSantis. Nikki Fried, the Florida Democratic Party chair, who's been on this program a couple times, she said Floridians across the state are tired of the divisiveness. They are tired of the culture wars. Ron DeSantis lost badly. We're seeing the same thing in California, in red counties in California, where 6 conservatives have been recalled, including 4 Republican-endorsed school board majorities in these red pockets of California. So that's going on. J.D. Vance has said, no, I will not, we will not have a national abortion ban if Donald Trump becomes president. You'll recall Trump on multiple occasions has said that he is ready to sign a national abortion ban. He said, he told a radio host, this was just a while ago, he said, the number of weeks now, people are agreeing on 15, and I'm thinking in terms of that, and it'll come out with something that's very reasonable. But he's going to have a ban, right? But then J.D. Vance goes on one of these Sunday shows over the weekend, Meet the Press, and he says, no, Donald Trump will not sign that. He will veto that. Right. I mean, in 2018, Trump called on the Senate to pass a limit on abortions, a national abortion ban. He celebrated overturning Roe v. Wade. And Elizabeth Warren was asked about this after J.D. Vance got off the air. And she said, and this is just perfect, she said, American women are not stupid. We are not going to trust the futures of our daughters and granddaughters to 2 men who have openly bragged about blocking access to abortion for women all across this country. Yeah, fascinating stuff. Meanwhile, Donald Trump came out in favor of increasing immigration. Now, this is totally strange, and he's just getting pillaged, attacked for this on social media. But apparently he's been talking to people in Silicon Valley or, whatever. And he says, we're going to need to let a lot of people in because we need more people, especially with AI coming and all the different things and the farmer needs. Everybody needs, but we're going to make sure that they're not murderers and drug dealers. Well, suddenly Trump's people are turning on him, going, how dare you? Oh, yeah. Now he's backing away from it, actually. And it looks like he's also backing away from the debate. I'll tell you about that after the break, and then I'll pick up your calls. It's great to be back home and back with you, and I will be back with you and your calls in just a moment. Stay with us right after this break here at the bottom of the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
27 minutes past the hour. Trump's debate and your calls up next. Stay with us. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism by Bernie Sanders. This is from the introduction titled Capitalism is the Problem. They say that the older you get, the more conservative you become. Well, that's not me. The older I get, the angrier I become about the uber-capitalist system under which we live, and the more I want to see transformational change in our country. Some people think that it's un-American to ask hard questions about where we are as a nation and where we're heading. I don't. To my view, there's nothing more American than questioning the systems that have failed us and demanding the changes we need in order to create the kind of society that we and future generations deserve. Here is the simple, straightforward reality. The uber-capitalist economic system that has taken hold in the United States in recent years, propelled by uncontrollable greed and contempt for human decency, is not merely unjust. It is grossly immoral. We need to confront that immorality boldly, bluntly, without apology. It is only then that we can begin to transform a system that is rigged against the vast majority of Americans and is destroying millions of lives. Confronting that reality and mobilizing people to bring about the transformational change we need is not easy. And that's why I've written this book. We need not only to understand the powerful forces that hold us down today, but equally important, to have a vision as to where we want to be in the future. It's my strong belief that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, with exploding technological progress that will greatly increase worker productivity, we can finally end austerity economics and achieve the long-sought human dream of providing a decent standard of living for all. In the 21st century, we can end the vicious dog-eat-dog economy in which the vast majority struggle to survive, while a handful of billionaires have more wealth than they could spend in 1,000 lifetimes. Let's be clear. While the middle class continues to decline, the system we have today is doing extremely well for the people who own it. These oligarchs have enormous wealth. They have enormous power. In fact, for the 1%, things have never been better. They have their mansions all over the world, their private islands, their expensive art, their yachts, their private jets. Some of them have spaceships that someday may take them to Mars. These oligarchs like the way things are going, and with unlimited resources at their disposal, will do everything possible to defend what they have and maintain the status quo. Yes, we live in a democracy, but they own that democracy. They spend tens of billions of dollars on campaign contributions to both major political parties in order to buy politicians who will do their bidding. They spend billions more on lobbying firms to influence governmental decisions at the federal, state, and local levels. That is why, over the last 50 years, we have consistently seen public policy that benefits the very rich at the expense of everybody else. Yes, we have freedom of speech and a free press, but to a significant degree, the oligarchs own that media. That is why the personalities they employ on TV, radio, newspapers, and social media don't ask embarrassing questions and rarely raise issues that will undermine the privileged positions of their employers. That's why, despite the many thousands of television networks, radio stations, and websites they own, there's little public discussion about the power of corporate America and how oligarchs wield that power to benefit their interests at the expense of working families. The good news is that while the oligarchs and the institutions they control work frantically to maintain the status quo, we are now beginning to see cracks in the system. Millions of Americans are starting to look at the society in which they live from a new and different perspective. They're beginning to think big, not small. They're asking hard questions and demanding answers that take them beyond the incremental politics and mainstream ideology of today. Many of them are finding answers in union organizing as they seek a greater say in their workplaces, along with better wages, benefits, and working conditions. I know a little bit about all of this, having run two of the most progressive grassroots campaigns for president in modern American history. In 2016, my campaign shocked the political establishment by winning 22 states and more than 13 million votes in the Democratic primaries, where I took on the party's anointed candidate. That's not supposed to happen.
That's not what the big money interests wanted. That's not what the corporate media wanted. That's not what super PACs and wealthy campaign contributors wanted. It's not what the super delegates wanted. But that's what happened. 4 years later, in 2020, we won the popular vote against a huge field of candidates in the first 3 Democratic primary states, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada. The result? A panicked political establishment came together behind Joe Biden, the one candidate they thought could beat us. The other candidates were asked to drop out. The most important lesson of those campaigns was not just the list of states that we won as we took on the greed and recklessness of the ruling class, or the total number of votes we received. More important was where the votes were coming from. They were coming in overwhelming numbers from people under 40, the future of our country. In state after state and in national polls, we won the support of young Americans by landslide proportions. These voters, Black, white, Latino, Asian American, Native American, understood from their lived experience that America's uber-capitalist system was not working for them. It was not working for them economically, as they were experiencing a lower standard of living than their parents. It was not working for them from an environmental perspective, as they faced a planet that was growing increasingly unhealthy and uninhabitable as a result of climate change. And he goes on, the book is It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism by Bernie Sanders.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
It's like a battlefield. With lines drawn in the sand and shields that never yield, it's always us against them in this endless fight. But in the clash of colors, we lose the shades of right. The media makes it my team, your team. But there's more to see in the American dream.
Welcome back. So Donald Trump took to Truth Social. I'm hearing myself in my ear right now, Sean. There you go. Thank you. So Donald Trump took to Truth Social over the weekend, writing, I watched ABC fake news. Actually, this was last week. I watched ABC fake news this morning. Both lightweight reporter Jonathan Karl's ridiculous and biased interview. Thom Hartmann, quack, quack, quack. He says, why would I do the debate against Kamala Harris on that network? Okay, so that was his complaint last week. His complaint this week, what he said yesterday, apparently has to do with the microphone. Donald Trump wants Kamala Harris's microphone to be turned off while he's talking so he can do the gish gallop, whatever you call it, which is the fire hose of lies strategy. This is where you take 3 or 4 or 5 lies, you string them all together, and you make it into one single sentence. And then your opponent has to go, okay, well, let's go through these one at a time, which is impossible to do. So at least 2 or 3 of those lies end up not being refuted or rebutted and being considered to be truth. So if Trump is doing the Gish Gallop thing and, you know, the fire hose of lies strategy, Harris needs to be able to say, no, that's not true, you know, every time he spouts a lie. And he wants her microphone turned off. Now, you know, this is kind of turnabout as fair play because Joe Biden wanted Donald Trump's microphone turned off because Trump was constantly interrupting him during the last debate, you know, arguably trying to do the same thing, except that, you know, Biden was not lying. But anyhow, this is Trump's new complaint. You know, I want her microphone turned off. So we'll see. You know, she is a former prosecutor. I think he watched the DNC. He watched those clips of her talking to, you know, Brett Kavanaugh and all these other people and, you know, asking tough questions. And I think he's terrified. He's terrified of going to prison. He's terrified of debating Kamala Harris. You know, he's terrified of strong women, particularly strong black women. You know, one has already taken him down, you know, Trish I'm forgetting her last name now, the Attorney General for New York State.
took him down in New York, Letitia James. And, he's just, poor Donald. I mean, his niece writes about him, Mary Trump, writes about him often on her Substack newsletter, about how frightened he is. I shouldn't say poor Donald, because I frankly don't feel sorry for him. I think he has done so much damage to so many people in his life. He's been such a malignant force in this country, and particularly in New York when he lived there. The way he did business. That I believe he deserves to be in prison, and that's what obviously the number one thing he's terrified of. So what say you? What's on your mind today? Susie in Willits, California. Hey, Susie, what's up?
Well, I just noticed since the Democratic convention, I'm seeing a lot of, Trump stuff. And it's just kind of weird.
Seeing what kind of Trump stuff where?
Well, what I mean is that they kind of want to pull us down when we're really doing well. And it's just, Trump is not, what I mean is that when I listen to the radio, I block from anything, and even I tried to find OAC's speech, and they're cutting our radio, so I can't even see that.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that, Susie. Thank you for the call. Brad in St. Paul, Minnesota. Hey, Brad, what's on your mind today?
Hi, I'm calling because on the other day I was in Chicago, and there was a police officer talking that had worked at the convention, and he was talking about how hypocritical the Democrats were. Electric cars, and they had the big SUVs, and then he said something about the fences. And
well, the big
about
SUVs
freedom.
are the government. I mean, that they are.
I tried saying that, but he was a police officer with a badge and a gun, and I have a fear of jail.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I just thought how he's calling them hypocritical, and supporting Donald Trump as an officer of the law sounds pretty hypocritical to me.
Yeah, Trump killed 3 cops on January 6th.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's what I just wanted to say, was the hypocrisy of police officers supporting him.
Yeah, well, and a lot of them do, sadly. In fact, as I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about this in the third hour of the program, how the Klan has been recruiting police. Did you know that 20% of all the January 6th violent, insurrectionists who have been successfully prosecuted by the Justice Department, 20% of them are affiliated with law enforcement? That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, I think you're right. Brad, thanks. Thanks for the call. Mark in South Bend, Indiana. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind? You wanted to talk about Bob Kennedy?
Hey, Tom. Hey, Tom. Nice talking with you today.
Thank you.
About 2 weeks ago, right before the convention, Congressman Polkan was answering questions from callers, and one question was about a gentleman who was upset that the Democrats got to seriously address the immigration problem, pouring the border crisis that he calls it, and that. Now, as you mentioned, and I think the congressman mentioned, border crossings were coming down, but in case there's another peak or whatever, I think a potential answer is the National Infrastructure Reinvestment Bank. That can be used to have more processing centers, deal with an influx of more migrants that are seeking asylum and are trying to get here legitimately and honestly. I think that would be of great assistance. And I disagree with the gentleman saying we need just a limited amount of immigration, not a lot. Well, okay, but it shouldn't just be based on a person's a social financial status if they have a pathway to immigration or not. There ought to be other factors involved. And the other thing is Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. dropped, given his support to Trump and dropping out, he was only pulling 2.7%.
Right.
He was pulling like 8 or 9 when Biden was still in. Then when after Biden dropped out, he fell to like 3%. And Harris is currently leading Trump 51 to 45.
Right.
Even with JFK and JFK Jr. is only pulling 3%,
RFK,
and even 70% of his support goes to Trump. It'll be less than 1% Trump would gain from all that.
Right. It looks like the supporters of Bob Kennedy kind of split evenly. After Biden dropped out, kind of split evenly between Trump and Harris. We'll see. I have a feeling that this is going to be a disaster for Trump. I think one of the main memes I'm seeing all across the internet now, on social media in particular, are people talking about, he had a period in his life while he was married where he had sex with, I think it was 36 different women, and he kept a detailed diary describing the nature of the sexual experiences. And apparently his wife found this and then hung herself. And I don't know if there's a connection between having found it and having hung herself or not, but his first wife died by suicide. And this story is starting to pick up some traction, and it's got to be distressing, to people who are involved with the campaign. On top of the brainworm thing and the dead bear thing, and it's just, weird hardly describes it. So, and in fact, we'll be talking to Greg Palast about that in about 20 minutes here. So we'll get to that. Mark, thanks for the call. Stephen in Lexington, Kentucky. Hey, Stephen, what's on your mind today?
Hello, how are you this afternoon, dear? I wanted to just share, it's not very long, but I wrote it yesterday on my Facebook page, and it deals with the elections coming up. Mr. Trump seems to labor under the delusion that he has it made come November. He refuses to customarily electioneer on the campaign trail, whimpers about the election being stolen 3 months prior to November 5th, stacks his myrmidons on election boards to run roughshod over the voters and the U.S. Constitution. So for years, the grand old platitude party harangues the rest of us about industry and ambition, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, only to have their nominee not bother to put forth the effort to do his own job.
Yeah.
If the immediate former president wants to play hardball, then I say Vice President Harris should accommodate him. He wants to upstage everyone, then Ms. Harris should continue to raise conscious awareness as she addresses crowds electioneering and unearth Trump's playbook on campaign commercials so that we can accentuate for the public that those who ignore history, her story, are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
Alarmism has concurrently become a fact of life in this era. Governors of all 50 states who hold the power to prosecute this lunatic fringe for tampering with ballots need to carol in chorus that the Trump campaign's cunning machinations will cause these sleazy little culprits to serve the rest of their lives in prison.
I got it. Stephen, thank you. It's 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's talk media for the sane among us. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Is that JR or is that Junior?
JR, sir.
JR. Hey, JR, what's on your mind today?
The definition of involuntary manslaughter is when one person's negligence causes the death of another person.
Correct.
From the time the insurgents kicked down the fences put up by the police until Miss Babbitt got shot and killed was 2 hours. Trump's negligence in those 2 hours to stop the violence seems to me he could be charged with involuntary manslaughter. Why is that outside the box? And I'll take your answer off the air, sir.
You're welcome to stick around. I don't think it's outside the... Well, he hung up. I don't think it's outside the box at all. And I do think that Donald Trump is guilty of involuntary manslaughter. And Ashley Babbitt wasn't the only person who died that day. There were 4 others
who died of being, I believe they were all natural causes or being trampled. And then there were 3 police officers who died within the next couple of days as a consequence of their injuries on that day. This is, I think it fits any reasonable definition of, what I think is called third-degree manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. I'm with you. I'm with you. I just, we don't have a Justice Department that apparently is willing to prosecute the obvious crimes right in front of us. I mean, Merrick Garland has not gone after the violations of the Logan Act. He has not gone after the violations of the Hatch Act. There have been multiple ones. It's unfortunate. Victor in Pomona, California. Hey, Victor, what's on your mind today?
Yes, hi. Thank you. Trump disavows knowledge of Project 2025.
Yeah, right.
And you're right. But what he does acknowledge is his Agenda 47,
right,
which nobody seems to be paying attention to. I haven't heard one comment on that, which is really just kind of a Cliff Notes version of 2025.
And I think that's why. I think that's why you're not hearing anything about it, because Project 2025 has gotten all the publicity. It was really heavily promoted for a while there by the Heritage Foundation and Republicans. They thought it was the coolest thing, and now it's blowing up in their face. So, why change the subject to Agenda 47 when it's essentially the same thing? As you point out, it's kind of the Cliff Notes version, Victor.
Yeah. And I just think that but it's something that I think is still active from
Sure.
Trump's standpoint, because he disavowed Project 2025.
Yeah, but nobody's believing that. That's the thing. I mean, more than half of the people who wrote Project 2025 were members of his administration.
I realize that. Yeah. But I just think that they maybe to link the two, somehow the public should know these two things are the same, and the content is just insidious. They knew that nobody's going to sit down and read 900 plus pages.
Sure. Do you know if the Republican Party has published a platform? I confess, I have not gone to look.
I think it's wet your finger and put it up to the wind.
Yeah, because in 2020, their platform was, we'll do whatever Donald Trump says. I mean, they literally did not publish a platform. Yeah. I'm assuming that if they did publish one, it's probably quite anodyne, but I've got to look that up. Yeah. Victor, thanks for the call, but yeah, spot on.
Thank you.
I appreciate your comments. It's 49 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So the Washington Post reported that it looks like General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the dictator of Egypt, organized a $10 million cash bribe to Donald Trump when he was most desperate for cash during the 2016 election. And then Donald Trump repaid him by embracing him, bringing him into the White House, making Egypt one of his visits, and just doing things that normally you don't do with countries that are run by dictators. The Washington Post pretty much nailed this. Well, why didn't we learn about this earlier? The FBI investigated it starting in 2018, but in 2019, Attorney General Bill Barr shut down the investigation. This is not the first time he has done this. He also shut down the investigation into the Iran-Contra affair, where the Reagan campaign was paying Iran with weaponry to hold the hostages to screw Jimmy Carter. There's an op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, "When Will Bill Barr Be Brought to Justice?" Check it out.
Message to share, tuning in the voices from everywhere.
9 minutes before the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Yeah, you're talking about chimpanzees, but I'm sure you know about the related species of bonobos.
I do, yes.
Right, who are smaller.
We are not evolutionarily linked to them, though. They split off long before the chimps.
And they went the right way.
It seems. They make love, not war.
Right. Well, it seems that all the animals that have matriarchal societies do a lot better.
Yeah.
And bonobos are the opposite. Right. Make love, not war. And the females seem to run the show. If a male gets, tough or something, they just sort of push him out of the circle.
Yep.
And that also, if it matters at all, if you're talking to a right-winger or something who eats fish, black sea bass, it's actually they're born females, and then they turn to males. They transition, and there's a lot of fish like that.
Don't tell Republicans.
Right.
They'll have to stop eating fish.
Right. Right. If you ever look at whatever they call it, lions, a group of lions,
the
males are always laying on their back in the suns, and the females are out hunting.
Yep.
Because all he's good for is to protect them.
Yeah.
And they
reproduction.
Run the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But with meerkats and other animals, and whales and elephants, where it's a matriarchal society, they're much more harmonious.
Yep.
And
we should take a lesson from that.
Well, the Indians did, the Iroquois, by making women in charge of wars and electing chiefs and things like that. And they actually consider people who are LGBTQ to be holy people because they call them two spirits, because they understand both sexes very well, and they're revered and regarded as important people.
Yeah.
Quite different than ours.
Yep, excellent, all excellent points, Bill. In fact, I touch on a lot of those points in my book, The Hidden History of American Democracy, and you said it so well. Thank you very much. I appreciate the call.
Sure.
Martin in Madison, Wisconsin. Hey, Martin, what's up?
Hello, Tom. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, thank you, Martin.
You're my hero.
Thank you.
Anyway, I had an idea about the debate. I was thinking it'd be better if he isn't even there. To use his talking points when he was debating Biden. Each talking point, and then be able to respond to it.
They should
maybe even throw in a couple of, some of the stuff about sharks and batteries or stuff. I think it'd be great to just make fun of him.
Yeah.
In the debate. Get the whole world laughing. Just imagine how red his face would be then.
Get a mechanical Donald Duck that quacks Trump quotes.
Well, maybe just actual, clips of him saying this. I mean, he said this, and this is my response.
I saw a cartoon.
I work at a.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say I work at a company that it's unbelievable what the construction trade is. There's 4 out of 30 of us who aren't racists, and it's all over the place. I mean, it's all over the country. It's just, there is no Christ message at all. In the Republicans. It's love thy neighbor. Well, I don't see that happening for the MAGAs anyway.
Yeah, sadly.
It's just sad. Yeah. You were saying?
No, I don't remember now. It was great comments, Martin. Thank you very much.
What was the cartoon?
I saw a cartoon this morning that was Melania walking along, holding the hand of a little Donald Duck with a big, long red tie. And wearing the Donald Duck sailor hat and everything, and it was kind of funny. Your point about the upcoming debate, I'm first of all, I think that if Donald Trump backs out or refuses to go along with it, Harris, I doubt that ABC would go along with just putting her on, but they should. I mean,
they should. Yeah, she should still go ahead with it. His points have to be addressed.
Yeah, there was a famous debate in the last decade or so where somebody debated an empty chair, and I'm not talking about
Clint
Eastwood.
Clint did that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. He did that. But I'm thinking of an actual debate. Well, maybe that was what I was thinking of. Of course, there was the head of lettuce, or was it cabbage? For Liz Truss in the UK, remember?
Yeah.
Is she going to last as long as the head of cabbage? I don't know. Is Trump going to last as long as the head of cabbage? I don't know. Martin, a great first call. Thank you so much for calling into the program today.
Sure, appreciate you.
Yeah, good talking to you. Thank you very much. It's the top of the hour. I'll be back on the other side with our old buddy Gabriel Rosales is going to be with us. The Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has got his police running around the state, kicking in the doors of Black and Hispanic people who merely wanted to vote. This is evil, evil stuff. We'll learn all about it in another 5-6 minutes. Just stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
We're reading from The Curse of Bigness, Antitrust in the New Gilded Age by Tim Wu. Sounds kind of a dry title, but it's a pretty amazing book. This is from and it's a very small book. This is from the introduction. We are 4 decades into a major political and economic experiment. What happens when the United States and other major nations weaken their laws meant to control the size of industrial giants? What is the impact of allowing unrestricted growth of concentrated private power and abandoning most curves on anti-competitive conduct? The answers, I think, are plain. We've managed to recreate both the economics and politics of a century ago, the first Gilded Age, and remain in grave danger of repeating more of the signature errors of the 20th century. As that era has taught us, extreme economic concentration yields gross inequality and material suffering, feeding an appetite for nationalist and extremist leadership. Yet, as if blind to the greatest lessons of the last century, we're going down the same path. If we learned one thing from the Gilded Age, it should have been this: the road to fascism and dictatorship is paved with failures of economic policy to serve the needs of the general public. Look at the global economy and witness the rule of concentrated oligopolies and monopolies in industries like finance, media, airlines, and telecommunications, just to name the most obvious. Firms whose size allows them to treat customers and competitors with impunity. Most visible in our daily lives is the great power of the tech platforms, especially Google, Facebook, and Amazon, who have gained extraordinary power over our lives. With the centralization of private power has come a renewed concentration of wealth and a widening gap between the rich and the poor. The concentration of wealth and power has helped transform and radicalize electoral politics. As in the Gilded Age, a disaffected and declining middle class has come to support radically anti-corporate and nationalist candidates, catering to a discontent that transcends party lines. A renewed economic nationalism around the world blames immigrant workers, foreign products, or elite conspiracies for the diminishment of the middle class. There is widespread anger at big business and how they treat customers, especially in concentrated or monopolized industries like insurance, pharmaceuticals, airlines, and other insensitive behemoths. Many fear Google, Amazon, and Facebook and their power over not just commerce, but over politics, the news, and our private information. What we must realize is that once again we face what Louis Brandeis called the curse of bigness, which, as he warned, represents a profound threat to democracy itself. What else can one say about a time when we simply accept that industry will have far greater influence over elections and lawmaking than mere citizens? When the American pharmaceutical industry can raise prices by thousands of %, confident the government will do little or nothing. When the middle class has no apparent influence on policies like health insurance, taxes, working conditions, housing, or other matters that determine how life is really lived. We must now face questions that have been ignored for more than a generation. Are extreme levels of industrial concentration actually compatible with the premise of rough equality among citizens, industrial freedom, or democracy itself? Can we create broad-based wealth and a sense of entrepreneurial opportunity in an economy dominated by monopolists? Is there just too much concentrated power in too few hands, with too much influence over government and our lives? The questions, I think, answer themselves. The main goal of this short volume is to see how the classic antidote to bigness, the antitrust and other anti-monopoly laws, might be recovered and updated to face the challenges of our times. For roughly a century, the antitrust law served in practice and theory as an anti-monopoly code that sought to limit excessive industrial concentration and to police monopoly conduct. By the midpoint of the last century, antitrust became widely understood in the Western world as a necessary part of a functioning democracy, as the ultimate check on private power. Yet over the span of a generation, the law has shrunk to a shadow of itself and somehow ceased to have a decisive opinion on the core concern of monopoly. The law that the Supreme Court once called a comprehensive charter of economic liberty aimed at preserving free and unfettered competition no longer condemns monopoly, but has grown ambivalent and sometimes even celebrates the monopolist as if the anti and antitrust has been discarded. Most of what follows can be understood to center on the recovery of one principle, that in enacting and repeatedly fortifying the antitrust laws, the United States made a critical, indeed constitutional choice in industrial and national policy. After a period of intense national debate, including the presidential election in 1912, where economic policy was the central issue, the nation rejected a monopolized economy and chose repeatedly over the decades to preserve its tradition of an open and competitive marketplace. The goal of antitrust law must be understood as respecting that choice, or as Louis Brandeis, the great prophet of a decentralized economy, put it, the antitrust laws answered the question, shall the industrial policy of America be that of competition or that of monopoly? What happened? The law is currently suffering from an overindulgence in the ideas first popularized by Robert Bork and others at the University of Chicago in the 1970s. Bork contended implausibly that the Congress of 1890 exclusively intended the antitrust law to deal with one very narrow type of harm. Rebooting the American Dream is the book.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome to the second hour of our program. On the line with us is Gabriel Rosales, the Texas LULAC State Director. There's just some wild stuff going on down in Texas here. Gabriel, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. First off, tell us about LULAC for people who are unfamiliar with your organization.
Yes, we're one of the largest and oldest civil rights organizations, Texas being our largest membership. But we have over a few 100,000 members across the country.
Great. And that's the League of United Latin American Citizens, right? That's what the acronym stands for? Yeah, okay.
Yes,
and
sir.
So tell us what Ken Paxton is doing down there in Texas. What's happening?
You know, in 2022, Ken Paxton has been pushing that this voter fraud. As you know, the Republican Party continues to act as if there's been this massive voter fraud where they've never been able to prove. So he put together this investigative team that goes into communities. They started to kind of under the radar. We just really didn't figure out what was going on in Tarrant County, you know, destroying people's lives, you know. You know, they lose their jobs, they lose their houses, and then we got the charges dropped. They then again came back in April of this year, this past year, I believe, or this year, and they raided in Pearsall, Texas. Again, it was under the radar. I really didn't, you know, I was hearing rumors of these things, and whoever it was that got served, they weren't really communicating with us. It wasn't until a couple of days ago they hit some of the LULAC membership. And that's when we kind of got the bigger picture of what was going on. And so what we do know, go ahead.
No, finish what you do know is.
So what we do know, right, is that one of the things that LULAC has fought for is to well, you know, under Russell Rosales' 200 single-member district lawsuits, opening up the doors for Latinos to be able to run for office. Our fight has always been to have a seat at the table, and so this is kind of a pushback on that. Right. But they're using their office to affect the outcome. They were hoping that we weren't going to say anything, that it was just going to happen and everybody was going to be scared and they were going to continue on. And closer to November, they're probably going to bring up fraudulent charges, making our candidate, Cecilia Castellano, who's a LULAC member, you know, a criminal. And it doesn't even matter if the charges stick. They put that out there right before election time to affect the outcome of an election, and that to me is illegal.
Ron DeSantis did this little trick down in Florida just before the 2022 election, I think it was, when he was on the ballot, and he had for re-election, and he, you know, kicked in the doors of a couple of dozen, mostly black people in Florida, and paraded them before the cameras in shackles. Most of them had no idea that they had committed a crime. You know, they were people who the state had said, sure, you can vote. You know, these were people who were convicted felons, but, you know, had served their time. And, of course, Florida had passed that whole ballot initiative that allowed for them to vote. And they dropped a lot of the charges after the election, but it appeared that during that election, there were almost 1 million fewer black voters in that election than there had been 2 years earlier. And there, you know, from which I think you could derive the conclusion that you know, kicking in the doors of black voters succeeds in causing a lot of black people to say, you know, I really don't want to vote. Is that what's going on in Texas, only with Hispanics? Are they kicking in the doors of people's houses?
Yes, that's exactly what's going on. And so, but one of the things here is we're not going to stand for it. We're going to continue to push forward. We're going to continue because there's a House District 80 race that Governor Abbott here is gunning for. Yeah. It's a 51% Republican turnout, but over 80% Latino population. But the Latino people historically have a historic apathy. But since we've been in there organizing and knocking on doors and talking to people, we've been able to increase that. We actually got our candidate onto the ballot. It was a tough race, but we got her in there. And I think they know the writing on the wall. So it just... Their candidate, McCaughlin, who's been endorsed by the governor and by Ken Paxton, is the race that they're trying to impact because it's going to be an embarrassment when we win this election for them. I
understand that you're going to the federal government, to the Department of Justice, I believe, and saying, please do something about Ken Paxton's terror tactics here. Is that true?
Well, yes, we are. We're actually going to file a charge of official suppression. We're working together with people like MALDAF, and we're hopefully going to get a hold of ACLU as well, because it shouldn't just be us. It's not just going to be us. Yeah. You know, when they invade the civil rights of one person, they're invading all of us. Yeah. And so we can't just stand by and allow this to take place. The Department of Justice, as you know, historically, has always been our relief here in Texas and South Texas, dating back to the beginning of time with the civil rights movement as well. So it just seems like they're resorting back to their old tactics of harassment, of coming and pointing guns at our people. These ladies were 80-year-old ladies. They're grandmothers.
Wow.
What they couldn't do in Uvalde, they did to our poor little old ladies. So these people are it's just it's unthinkable, the harassment. I had Lydia Martinez, one of the victims. She was crying on the phone.
Yeah.
And I told her, don't worry about it. We're with you. What they do to you, they do to us. We're not going to let you do this alone. And so we blasted out, and thank you for covering this, because we want people to know the truth. The truth is nobody broke any laws. Yeah. The truth is that they're using this voting integrity unit to go out and intimidate the Latino community here in Texas. And we're not going to stand for it. Yeah, we're going to fight back. We're organizing press conferences on every county, from Frio to Atascosa, within the House District 80, to let people know, don't be scared. Justice and equality is through the ballot box.
This is a long-time Republican strategy. We're talking with Gabriel Rosales, the Texas LULAC state director. LULAC.org is the website. Operation Eagle Eye, I mean, William Rehnquist started his political career, which ended with him being Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, started his political career standing outside polling places in Phoenix, in rural areas around Phoenix where there was large Latino populations and Native American populations. And he was a big bear of a man, and he was a lawyer, and he just challenged their right to vote and would challenge them so aggressively that many of these people would simply leave. They wouldn't bother voting. He threatened them and those kind of, this was a nationwide effort by Republicans in the 1964 election, the Barry Goldwater election. So they've been doing this for a long time, Gabriel.
Definitely.
Do you, and it worked for, Ron DeSantis in Florida, scaring black voters. It's got to be a fine line that you're walking here between helping publicize Ken Paxton's raids, because he wants that publicized. He wants people to be afraid. He wants them to think, hey, if you're Hispanic and you vote, they're going to kick in your door and drag you off. And even if you get off, you're going to have to spend $100,000 in legal fees. But on the other hand, you want people to vote and not to be intimidated by it. How do you do that? How do you thread that needle?
It is a fine line, but we have a lot of good friends. Domingo Garcia, who's an attorney, and we're ready to stand behind them. What we need them to know is that they're not alone, that we're going to fight back with them. And so we're working together with several other, we're looking to talk to ACLU. Malda, Fatima Mendez was there with us today to see how it is that we can set up a defense team for our people, for the Latinos in the community, so that they know, because you're right, they're on fixed incomes. Yeah. They don't have the money to hire an attorney. Yeah. And so that was one of the first things that they told me. And I said, you don't worry about that. You let me worry about that. We're going to get together with all the civil rights organizations in Texas and across the country so that we can begin to fight back and fight back immediately. So we're hoping to get that complaint done with the Department of Justice sooner than later.
You're doing God's work, Gabriel. How can people who are listening to this program right now reach out and help? Is there anything that we can do?
Well, we're going to be setting up. Go to our website, make donations to the League of United LULAC.org, the national office, or go to the Texas website. Either one.
What is the Texas website?
Get in there. It is TexasLULAC.org, I believe. I'm not too sure. I'm so sorry. I'm all kind of out there. Go in there and leave us a message. Let us know that you want to support. One of the things you can do is we're doing a robust voter registration across the state. So we're going to be in Houston. We're going to, because this terror tactic, it begins with them tearing down our public schools. It begins with them also terrorizing the immigrant population, who bring $4.9 million to the economy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I found your website. It's TexasStateLULAC.com. Texas State, StateLULAC.com.
Yes.
So anybody listening, get over there and see how you can help out. This is a real battle, and these Republicans in Texas, particularly Ken Paxton, who himself has been accused of multiple crimes in office. This is just wrong. This is criminal. Gabriel Rosales, the Texas LULAC State Director,
And again, the website, TexasStateLULAC.com. Thanks so much for dropping by, Gabriel.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back. It's 17 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls in just a moment. Stay tuned. And welcome back. Diane in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hey, Diane, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Oh, see, I watched recently.
Diane, you just faded out. I've lost your phone. Maybe you pushed the mute button by accident? Diane? I'm sorry, I can no longer hear you, Diane. Tom in Mossy Head, Florida. Hey, Tom, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to when you opened the program with the chimpanzees and our DNA being similar.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of bizarre, but I hate to keep bringing back Vietnam, but when you're in severe combat, I mean, you have no choice but to be there and in it.
Right.
You almost become superhuman again. I guess it's maybe the adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
But, you don't feel pain. You just get totally absorbed in the whole thing. And it's bizarre. And I think it's the adrenaline rush because after that, when I was back out on the world, I tried about every kind of drug there was. You can never get that high again.
Yeah.
And the same thing with prison. The alpha male, the total violent person, those kind of run the shop.
Yep. Good point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. If they, it's like you hear about women that, there's a car wreck and their baby's under the car and they pick the car up.
Yep.
We become superhuman. I don't know how we could ever control that to where we could access it. We could do some amazing things.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get it, and in war it's kill or be killed, and I get that too. I thought, when I was writing this piece, I was trying to figure out a way to make this kind of relatable to everybody, because most people, particularly most white people in America, which is the majority of Americans, have not had the experience of being discriminated against, of being the other. They've only had the experience of pointing to the other, and what occurred to me was the Bruce Willis movies that we, to talk about how easily we can be programmed to actually cheer on killing. You go to these movies, or the Liam Neeson movies, and there's a bunch of them. It's a whole genre of movies, where, the bad guys are just evil, 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 and in the end, they get their comeuppance, and typically it means they're dead. And in fact, a lot of them get killed. And we're there cheering them on, and it's just like that's deep in our DNA. Once you identify that other person as an other and as a threat, then, all the rules change, Tom, as you experienced in Vietnam.
And, the movie wouldn't be any good if the good guy got killed every time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Couldn't work for it.
Yeah, no, and it's, this is a long time thing in fiction. In fiction, actually, one of the first things they teach you in writing classes is that the anti-hero, the antagonist, is more important than the protagonist. The antagonist, the movies that you remember are the ones where the evil guy is really evil, Hannibal Lecter kind of things. So,
right.
Yeah, good point. Tom, I got to run, but thanks for the call. Nice to hear from you. And I hope you're healing up.
You too, sir.
Your knees getting better?
Yeah, a whole lot better, man. I'm about almost back to normal.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear it.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, there you go.
All right,
good talking to you, sir. Thank you. It's 21 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls and the news of the day in just a moment. Stay tuned. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives
to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capital Switchboard. It'll get you right through to them.
From Los Angeles to Columbia, South Carolina, from Birmingham, Alabama to Baltimore, universal basic income programs are chalking up proof after proof of their viability. Basically just giving people, low-income people, poor people, somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a month, no strings attached, is lifting people out of poverty, getting them back on track, getting them into solid middle-class jobs, helping their children tremendously. This works. Now, we don't have to do UBI in the United States. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a national health care program. Health expenses are whacking a lot of low-income people. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have free college education. Education expenses are whacking people. There's a lot we could do. We can subsidize housing. We can subsidize food. We do that with food stamps. We could expand it. There's a lot we could do to benefit from this. There's a whole report about that over at hartmanreport.com. Check it out.
From the sunrise on the eastern shore to the sunset where the oceans roar, America's beauty vast and wide. From coast to coast we share with pride.
Welcome back. 23 minutes past the hour. Tim, the Republicans think they've got Tim Walz. We nailed him. We finally nailed him. We found the scandal, right? This is like, you know, John Kerry claiming that he was wounded when he in fact put a Band-Aid on, which of course was a lie. But here it is. Tim Walz has posted on social media 2 pictures of him and his dog, or him and a dog. One is him holding this black dog, who is his black Labrador, and his name is Scout. And the other is a picture of Tim Walz, on one knee, petting a brown dog, and talking about how Scout had a wonderful day at the dog park in the social media thing. And so the Republicans, now here's what's happened was his dog Scout met a friend in the dog park. So the picture from the second picture, social media, where he says Scout met a friend at the dog park, that's the picture of Scout's friend. It's not the picture of Scout. You got this? So here's 2 pictures. Tim Walz, one is with him and his dog, and the other is with him and the dog friend that his dog made at the local dog park. I mean, this is just a typical kind of American thing, right? I mean, we take our dogs to a dog park and they make friends, and you know. But Republicans have gone nuts. They think this is just Dustin Gage posted these things, and he says, "Yep, this is Tim Walz tweeting about his dog Scout. Only problem is these are 2 completely different dogs." Well, yeah, read the second message, you idiot. Republican U.S. Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri, right? A U.S. Senator responds, "Why would Tim Walz do this? It's creepy, TM, and weird, TM." Like he's trademarking creepy and weird. Oh, this is kind of creepy and weird, Senator Schmidt, that you would think, you know, another right-winger says, well, apparently Scout only sometimes identifies as a dog of color. You know, this is referencing Vice President Harris's, or Donald Trump questioning Vice President Harris's race when he was talking to the National Association of Black Journalists. The producer for the old Rush Limbaugh show, Browan Doherty, says, "I look forward to Tim Walz's explanation. And can you imagine if J.D. Vance tweeted about his dog Scout and it was 2 different dogs?" Well, yeah, if the second one was the friend that your dog made in the dog park, I can imagine it. But I don't think J.D. Vance has a dog, does he? I know Donald Trump doesn't. He hates dogs. He hates cats. He hates pets of all kinds. He thinks that they're unsanitary and covered with, you know, germs. Speaking of Donald Trump, by the way, this morning he was at Arlington National Cemetery. Yep, Corporal Cadet Bone Spurs actually had the audacity to go to Arlington National Cemetery and lay a wreath. Bizarre. So A.J. Delgado, who used to be a Trump campaign staffer, actually, says these morons have such low thinking skills that it didn't occur to them that Walz was taking a photo with another dog because they're at the dog park and referencing this Scout enjoyed it. He's not saying it's Scout featured in the picture. Morons. I mean, this is all you've got, Republicans? Really? This is your big scandal? Is, oh my God, this second dog doesn't look like the first dog. Well, amazing. Meanwhile, the corporate fat cats in America are having conversations about which politicians should we be bribing. Now that the Supreme Court has made it legal for us to bribe politicians, who should we be bribing? And they're talking about it in their earnings reports. I'll tell you about that right after the break, and then I'll pick up your calls. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Defending America from the weapons of mass deception. I'll be right back with you.
Hi, welcome to the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. David Blight's book, Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom. This is from the introduction. In his speech at the dedication of the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., September 24, 2016, President Barack Obama delivered what he termed a, quote, clear-eyed view of a tragic and triumphant history of black Americans in the United States. He spoke of a history that is central to the larger American story, one that is both contradictory and extraordinary. He likened the African American experience to the infinite depths of Shakespeare and Scripture. The, quote, embrace of truth as best we can know it, said the president, is, quote, where real patriotism lies. Naming some of the major pivots of the country's past, Obama wrapped up his central theme in a remarkable sentence about the Civil War era. Quote, we've buttoned up our Union blues to join the fight for our freedom. We've railed against injustice for decade upon decade, a lifetime of struggle and progress and enlightenment that we see etched in Frederick Douglass's mighty leonine gaze, end quote. How Americans react to Douglass's gaze, indeed how we gaze back at his visage, and more important, how we read him, appropriate him, or engage his legacies, informs how we use our past to determine who we are. Douglass's life and writing emerged from nearly the full scope of the 19th century, representative of the best and the worst in the American spirit. Douglass constantly probed the ironies of America's contradictions over slavery and race. Few Americans use Shakespeare and the Bible to comprehend his story and that of his people as much as Douglass. And there may be no better example of an American radical patriot than the slave who became a lyrical prophet of freedom, natural rights, and human equality. Obama channeled Douglass in his dedication speech, knowingly or not. So do many people today. Born Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey, a slave, in Talbot County, Maryland, in February 1818, the future Frederick Douglass was the son of Harriet Bailey, one of 5 daughters of Betsy Bailey, and with some likelihood his mother's white owner. He saw his mother for the last time in 1825, though he hardly knew her. She died the following year. Douglass lived 20 years as a slave and nearly 9 years as a fugitive slave subject to recapture. From the 1840s to his death in 1895, he attained international fame as an abolitionist, editor, orator of almost unparalleled signature, and the author of 3 autobiographies that are classics of the genre. As a public man, he began his abolitionist career 2 decades before America would divide and fight a civil war over slavery that he openly welcomed. Douglass was born in a backwater of the slave society of the South, just as steamboats appeared in bays and on American rivers, and before the telegraph, the railroad, and the rotary press changed human mobility and consciousness. He died after the emergence of electric lights, the telephone, and the invention of the phonograph. The renewed orator and traveler loved and used most of these elements of modernity and technology. Douglass was the most photographed American of the 19th century, explained in this book, and especially by the intrepid research of 3 other scholars I write upon. Although it can never really be measured, he may also have been, along with Mark Twain, the most widely traveled American public figure of his century. By the 1890s, in sheer miles and countless number of speeches, he had few rivals as a lecturer in the golden age of oratory. It is likely that more Americans heard Frederick Douglass speak than any other public figure of his time. Indeed, to see or hear Douglas became a kind of wonder of the American world. He struggled as well with the pleasures and perils of fame as much as anyone else in his century, with the possible exceptions of General Ulysses S. Grant or P.T. Barnum. Douglas's dilemma with fame was a matter of decades, not merely of moments, and fraught with racism. The orator and writer lived to see and interpret black emancipation, to work actively for women's rights long before they were achieved, to realize the civil rights triumphs and tragedies of Reconstruction, and to witness and contribute to America's economic and international expansion in the Gilded Age. He lived to the age of lynching and Jim Crow laws, when America collapsed into retreat from the real victories and revolutions in race relations that he had helped to win. He played a pivotal role in America's second founding out of the apocalypse of the Civil War, and he very much wished to see himself as a founder and defender of the Second American Republic. In one lifetime of anti-slavery, literary, and political activism, Douglas was many things, and the set of apparent paradoxes makes his story so attractive to biographers, as well as to so many constituencies today. He was a radical thinker and a proponent of classic 19th century political liberalism. At different times, he hated and loved his country. He was a ferocious critic of the United States and all its hypocrisies, but also, after emancipation, became a government bureaucrat, a diplomat, and a voice for territorial expansion. He strongly believed in self-reliance and demanded an activist interventionist government at all levels to free slaves, defeat the Confederacy, and to protect black citizens against terror and discrimination. Douglas was a serious constitutional thinker, and few Americans have ever analyzed race with more poignancy and nuance than this mostly self-taught genius with words. He was a radical editor, writer, and activist. The book Frederick Douglass by David Blight.
Succeed as a hunter in a farmer's world.
Hey, if you like the rants that I open the show with every day, they're typically published over at hartmanreport.com. Check it out. It's no coincidence that the time in Europe when the church ran the continent, you know, from around the 5th century to around the 15th or 16th century, that 1,000-year period is referred to as the Dark Ages. This is what happens when religion controls politics, when religion controls the state, the nation, and every nation of Europe was controlled essentially by the Catholic Church during that period of time. It got busted up with the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. This was what the founders of this country very much knew about. George Washington refused to declare himself a Christian. Thomas Paine wrote an entire book embracing atheism. Ben Franklin fled Massachusetts as a teenager to escape the religious threats. And Thomas Jefferson went off on it regularly. There's a whole piece about how the Republicans are trying to impose a new dark age on America. It's all laid out, all the quotes and all the links over at hartmanreport.com. Check it out.
Changing every day, frustrating in your heart, and you don't know what to say. You feel the weight of anger, the heaviness of fear, but there's a way to make a change. The path is crystal clear. Don't just sit there waiting for the tide to turn. Rise up and take your stand. Let your passion burn. Don't get mad, get involved. Let your voice be heard.
Yep, Tag, you're it. 35 minutes past the hour. Rise in election talk from U.S. executives highlights policy uncertainty, writes the headline over at Meta Singh's piece on Reuters, the news service. Meta writes, U.S. company executives are talking much more about the upcoming presidential election than they did 4 years ago. In company earnings calls, and this is where the senior executives of the company get on the phone with the largest shareholders, generally speaking. Over the last 2 months, ending August 15th, mentions of election or White House were 34% higher than the corresponding period in 2020. After energy and carbon emissions, including renewables and electric vehicles, the Inflation Reduction Act, tariffs, and trade were the most talked about policy topics by companies which cited elections. In other words, this is what they're worried about. They're worried that these companies are worried that a Harris administration might crack down on fossil fuel emissions, might continue to promote electric vehicles,
and renewables, that they might expand the Inflation Reduction Act, that they might impose tariffs on some products, some strategic products to encourage domestic manufacturing. And frankly, I think all these things are going to happen. Sam Stovall, the chief investment strategist at CFRA Research, says company profits could be affected materially depending on which party gains the White House, especially if it's either a red or blue wave. Dave Wagner, who's the portfolio management at Aptus Capital Advisors, says it all comes down to taxes in this market. In other words, these big business guys are afraid that Harris is going to raise taxes. He goes on to say the new corporate tax rate is an instant haircut to earnings growth. That's why a lot of these companies are really starting to talk about this to get ahead of the curve. Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, is proposing increasing the corporate tax. When Trump came into office, the top income tax rate for corporations, and keep in mind, corporations only pay this on after-tax profits. So, you know, it's fairly easy to have a company show no profit at all. You just, you know, invest in, you know, pay your employees more, or invest in research and development, develop a new product line, build a new factory. All those things are tax-deductible expenses and reduce your profits. But nonetheless, the top income tax rate was 35% when Trump came into office in 2017. He dropped it down to 21%. Kamala Harris is saying, let's take it back up to 28%. Now, keep in mind, when Dwight Eisenhower was president, it was 50%, which is where it should be. But anyhow, these executives, they're sitting around going, well, you know, I don't know what we should do. The Supreme Court said we can bribe politicians. Which politicians should we be bribing? It's a tough question. Anyhow, what's on your mind? Let's pick up your calls here. Ziggy in Oneonta, New York. Hey, Ziggy, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Having heard some of the earlier callers, I felt compelled to call in because for me, the last week has been just fantastic.
Okay.
You know, I do the kind of Norma thing, but differently. I will walk around with my T-shirts and hats and other stuff, and the number of people who have approached me has grown tenfold. And they're all the same. They're all excited. They want to find out more. They're like on my side. And I get the sense of feeling of freedom. I feel like they're not afraid to have to talk about this now. And, you know, I'm just really seeing a sea change of mood here. And, you know, I just want to give that energy to everybody. Try it out. It's working, you know?
That's great. That's great. I don't know if you've got this in your collection, but over on Amazon, there's a company that does custom hats. And I got a camo hat. In fact, I don't know if you can see it in the actually, I can put it. This is it. It's a camo hat, and it says Harris Walls on it. And, you know, the campaign is offering these, but they say they're not going to start shipping them until October. And so I just ordered one on Amazon. Actually, I ordered 4 of them. And, you know, give them to my family members. You know, I wore it to work the other day, and there was one couple that I walked by, and the woman gave me this kind of, not quite a thumbs up, you know, more like with her face than her thumb. And her husband scowled at me. So,
yeah, that'll happen. Well, you know, one thing about that, Tom, just so you know, I don't put those on my site, and I'm surprised Amazon lets you do it, because if I'm competing against Harrison Waltz, I'm not allowed to, but also I don't want to. I want them to get the income from the sale of those items.
Yeah.
Mine will be similar to theirs, and actually I have some of their material that I wear as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's
and
good.
so that's the reason why you probably won't see that on my site. Just I should mention that, because sometimes people ask me for certain types of things, and I say I can't.
No,
do that
I ordered one.
Infringe.
You know, I went to the DNC site to order one when I learned that they were selling them, and you know, I put my credit card in and everything, and then it said, you know, it will ship in October, and I thought, well, I want one right now. So that's why I ended up at Amazon.
That's actually kind of that's where I sometimes I don't want to be critical, but that's where they should be doing something different to get them out, because they need to be out early.
I agree. I agree. They should have contracted.
You know.
Well, I think the problem is that they're only contracting with union firms, and there's not enough union shops in America that are doing that kind of stuff. You know, there's little doubt in my mind. In fact, the company that I did this through, Amazon, is apparently a little family-owned business. You know, so it's not a union shop. I mean, it probably doesn't have that many employees.
So anyway, Ziggy, I got to move along, but thanks for the call and keep up the great work. And tell people what your website is once more.
Oh, endbribes.com, and you got 2 different stores you can get directed to. I've got some new stuff that I've got from the convention. I'm putting together dozens of new items from the ideas I got from the convention.
Great. Okay, cool. Thank you, Ziggy.
All right.
Good talking to you.
All right, take care, Tom.
You too.
All right, bye.
Brad in Tampa, Florida. Hey, Brad, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. So, first part, I want to say that what is happening, or ask, what is happening with CNN? So I listened to the CNN Sunday show, and when Jake Tapper was interviewing Lindsey Graham was saying some of the most vile lies. Democrats want abortion up till 9 months, time at birth. He literally said that. There was no pushback, no objection. The only thing Tapper said was, well, there was a lot of stuff that we should dive into or not dive into there, but let's go on to another question.
Right.
And Lindsey Graham was just espouting these lies that I keep hearing.
I know. J.D. Vance
right.
did the same thing in an interview with Jake Tapper the week earlier. And they had and after the Democratic convention, they had a panel where they had 8 people, are all undecided voters. And one of
them wasn't.
Exactly. One of them was not just a Trump supporter, but an outspoken Trump supporter with a huge social media presence who told CNN on several occasions that he was a Trump supporter. And at the very end, he was, yeah, I'm still voting for Donald Trump. And, he was a ringer. And I think CNN is trying to put their thumb on the scale. I really do. I get it that, the new head of the network and the new head of programming are both Republicans. They're both right-wingers. And that probably has something to do with it, Brad.
Well, and I've seen a little bit of shift on Fox News as well. Fox News on their reporting, just as the Daily Show shows. Because I watch MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, and I even tune in Newsmax every once in a while, only when it's big stories. And I see a little bit of shift on Fox News of getting kind of bringing in more Democratic voices, not just getting away from the fringe right.
Yeah, although during the convention when Adam Kinzinger was speaking, Fox News cut him off. They did not show him at all. They just had their commentators on talking, all during that time, because they did not want their Republicans to see a Republican who was saying, I'm a Republican, I continue to be a Republican, and I'm a conservative and I'm not changing, but I am voting for Harris. And, they just did not want that. So, it's really unfortunate that, obviously Fox News is going to do that. They're a propaganda channel, but CNN has been veering in that direction more and more. Very unfortunate. Brad, thanks a lot for the call. Good to hear from you. We'll be right back. It's 44 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's 45 minutes past the hour. Back with your calls. And welcome back. Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry. Thanks for listening to KPFK. What's up?
Hey, Tom. One of the great things about Los Angeles on Sundays is if you stay up until midnight and you turn into right-wing radio, which is KABC, you can, they have these 2 guys who are the hosts. And if you listen carefully, you can figure out what they're worried about. And last night at midnight, one of the things that they were pushing, and this is news to me, I think we all believe that on September 18th, we're going to get some kind of a sentence from the judge on Trump.
Oh, yeah, Judge Merchan.
And these guys were saying that Merchan going to bail, not give his sentence. And I'm just wondering if you've heard anything about this.
As far as I can tell, and from everything I've read and heard, Judge Merchan has buttoned this thing up tight as a drum. Nobody knows what he's planning on doing. He did move the sentencing back to September 18th. I would be surprised if he threw Trump in jail immediately. I wouldn't be surprised if he did sentence him to jail time and said that he doesn't have to begin serving it until after the first of the year. I also wouldn't be surprised if he simply sentences him to a large fine and or community service, because it is, white collar crime, which typically doesn't have so much jail time associated with it, although there have been a lot of people who have been convicted of the same kinds of tax and insurance fraud as Trump was convicted of, who have spent a lot, years in prison, actually. So we'll see. We'll see, Larry. I would not want to be Judge Merchan right now. He's this is a tough guy. This is a strong guy, smart guy. So anyhow, we'll see. We'll find out. Larry, thanks for the call. Kwamel in Gardenia, California. Hey, Kwamel, what's up?
Yeah, I'm finally on. I called Friday, and I was like, "Oh, I'm lucky," and there's an audience question like, "Oh man."
Yeah,
anyways, I wanted to make this. Yeah, it beats what it beats. Let me just make this point, and I got to get out of your way about the negative, othering, vilifying, demonizing way of the right, the GOP, the whole Trumpistan sphere. You see the difference when you see the young, vibrant arm system that's built on the Democratic side, versus everything is drawing from a well of, let's find this group I don't like, let's find this group others seem not to like, let's find.
Yeah, the RNC was all about white grievance.
Everything is about white grievance, rich grievance, I got mine grievance, and I just wonder how they feel like they can attract anybody besides just really awful, bad, negative people.
Yeah.
And I've spoken on this before, other places, just about the idea of getting back to optimism. Like say what you will about Reagan's time, but there was an optimism about being American and about wanting to get things done. And getting back to that is a big lift in the spirits for us all.
I agree.
I see the break coming, but thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Kwamel. It's great to hear from you again. Thank you so much. And spot on. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio, and tag you're it. Everybody's all excited about how Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are doing so well in the polls, and there's so much energy around the Democratic candidacy, and that's great. And we need to keep that up. And Trump seems to be going down in flames, the fat Elvis phase of his life or his career. But it's important to realize that over $6 billion has been raised so far in dark money from mostly right-wing billionaires and big corporations, and none of it has been spent yet. September, October, it's coming. There's a tsunami of dark money coming, and we need to get ready for it. And the big way to get ready for it is to double down on registering people to vote, phone banking, sending out postcards, talking to neighbors and friends, getting the word out, because it's gonna come down to people. It's gonna come down to people power. There's a whole article about this called "Will Democracy Survive the Tsunami of Dark Right-Wing Money Coming This Fall?" over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
In the heart of the city, out in the countryside.
Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Maureen in St. Louis, Missouri. Hey, Maureen, what's on your mind today?
Oh, hi, Tom. Well, now Trump is trying to change the rules on the debate September 10th.
Yeah.
He wants to have the microphones muted again.
Right.
Like he did in the debate with Biden. That, poor Biden looked so bad in that debate. And I think it was a couple weeks afterwards was an interview that Joe Biden had with George Stephanopoulos.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained that while he was talking, Trump just kept talking also. You know, so Biden couldn't keep his thoughts because Trump just kept talking.
Right.
But because Trump's microphone was muted, all of us viewers did not know that that was happening.
Right.
And I think that the moderator should have said something, but they didn't. But it was just such a shame because everyone just went how bad Biden looked.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing this interview, it never went anywhere else. That was the only time I ever heard them talk about that.
That's interesting.
And,
I didn't catch that.
it was just a shame. And it made so much sense because, you know, Trump, it was kind of like what he did with Hillary, walking behind her and intimidating her. So now him and his whole team realized how great that worked and how bad Biden looked. So now they want to do the same thing to Kamala.
Yeah.
And hopefully her team, I don't think they'll cave.
No, and she will not be intimidated. She's going to eat his lunch. She's just going to eat his lunch, and he knows it, and that's why I think there's a good chance he's going to back out of this debate. He's just terrified right now. So
it was just a shame, and I keep trying to tell people about what happened that day because it makes me mad that the media never reported that about Joe Biden and just let him look like an old man. You know, they just went on with that. And, it was the only time I heard him say that.
Yeah.
What a shame.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
Maureen, thank you. Thanks for setting the record straight.
Okay.
Appreciate the call. Diane in Ann Arbor. Hey, Diane, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Say, I have a solution for this last call about talking over. Remember those game shows where they put them in a sound box? And put each of them in a sound box. And then when Trump starts, going on, cut him off completely. So his mouth is moving, but no sound is coming out inside his sound box.
But the dynamic has reversed here, Diane. Now it's going to be Kamala Harris interrupting Trump every time he tells a lie, and that's what he's trying to prevent.
I hope she does it because
I do too.
I hope she does.
She will.
But the reason, I hope so. The reason I called is, have you ever listened to David Feldman? Did you listen to him?
I'm not familiar with who that is.
When I watch him, I think of you. And when I watch,
you mean David Pakman on the evening on Free Speech TV?
No. David Feldman, Feldman. Please write that down.
Okay.
And here's a YouTube. He's on YouTube, and give him a try. Here's a good one. Trump turns away from base. That's it. Trump turns away from base. Mm-hmm. Put that in and listen to this man. He is so knowledgeable. He does his homework, and he brings up stuff that I think you and he would have a really good conversation over a beer or whatever.
Right.
You both would keep up with each other.
Okay.
But his yes, it says so many good things about how the winning map and all this and this and that things you never think of.
Yeah.
Okay, so then he says. And I'm with this. I'm all over Harris and Walz, winning. I think they're there. I really do. Congress, we got a whole Congress, and
we've got to take the Senate. John Tester's going to be the key to that.
There you go. That's the reason for me calling what he talked about, the trifecta. We got to keep that so we can get through the second Bill of Rights. Essentially, is what Kamala is talking about. That's essentially what she's talking about.
Yep.
And he talked about John Tester. He got me so fired up. I called and contributed money to him because he says we cannot do it without Tester.
Yeah, no, it's
Tester
true. It's absolutely true,
recently,
and that's the key to holding the Senate. Diane, I need to move along, but thank you for the call and thanks for the recommendation. Mark in Columbia, South Carolina. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, actually, I'm in a little town called Branchville, whose claim to fame is the oldest railroad junction in the world.
Oh, cool. Let me fix that. Did you say Branchville?
Branchville, Branchville.
You got
Branchville, South Carolina.
I'll have it.
Yeah.
I'll have it correct next time.
I was just thinking, and something popped into my head when we were in school. They talked about medieval times and how there was landowners and serfs. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me like that's what the Republican Party wants. They don't want the middle class because they are a very powerful voice right now. And starting with Reagan, they tried to, diminish what
That was Reagan's. Those were his marching orders. There was this widespread belief among Republicans. There still is, but Russell Kirk championed this back in 1951 with his book, The Conservative Mind. This widespread belief among Republicans that if the middle class gets too large, too prosperous, that it will cause social chaos in the United States. And so you've got to gut the middle class. That was Reagan's mandate, and he did it. He did it.
Yeah, he did. Same thing with the how the economy seems to run off the stock market when it never used to.
Yeah.
And now Reagan got rid of all the,
we used to have labor sections in the newspapers, you know. I mean, when I grew up in Michigan, the Detroit Free Press, as I recall, always had a business section, and the Detroit News always had a labor section. I might have them backwards, but, you know, all that's gone now, and you can thank Reagan for that. Mark, spot on. Thank you very much for the call. We're hitting the top of the hour here. Our buddy Greg Palast will be with us on the other side of this break about Bob Kennedy and his brain worm. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. 1 hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3 hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Minority Leader, How to Lead from the Outside and Make Real Change by Stacey Abrams. This is from Chapter 1, although the introduction is fascinating too, where she talks about, you know, Rhodes scholarships and stuff, but this is Chapter 1. I sit in a living room, a cozy space, warm in the early summer. I'm perched on the edge of a sofa next to Valerie, the home's owner, a lovely black woman in her late 40s. Across from us, seated close together on a wide settee met for one, are her 2 children, a son and a daughter. Politicians rarely visit their streets, which are nestled in a poorer community in South Georgia. Valerie beams with pride that both her children are headed to college in the fall. David, 17, plans to study criminology. Maya, 18, her belly round with her first child, intends to become a middle school teacher. Both newly graduated from high school, Maya will give birth in mere weeks and begin college months later, an unwed teen mother. Her intended school is more than 3 hours north of her home, so her mother will raise her newborn baby while she starts her freshman year. Valerie speaks matter-of-factly about the coming challenge, raising a new child just as hers leaves the nest. Still, she is determined that both her children pursue college degrees that she never received. Maya, the mother-to-be, wonders how she'll do so far away from home and her baby. Yet in the next breath, she explains how college will be the best for her and her child. Their future success rests upon her. I've come to their home as part of my campaign for governor, so I asked Valerie what she expects of someone like me. What can I do to help make lives like hers better? In her soft voice, she replies, she just wants options for financial aid for her children. They will succeed, she says, if they can afford to stay in school. As I look around the modest home passed down through the generations, I understand both the pride and the desperation tangled in her response. She got them through and has given them the tools to carve out better lives for themselves. We chat more about the worries she's lived with all those years, our discussion turning to the crime and poverty in their neighborhood. Then I ask Valerie what she wants. At first, all I get in response is a quizzical look to suggest I need to reconsider my bid for higher office. Or that suggests. I repeat, what do you want for you? What secret dream do you have for yourself? Her confused expression turns to one of surprise. I don't know, she tells me. I've been a cashier at the Piggly Wiggly for 20 years. You must want something, I probe, something you'd like to do for you? A daycare, she admits quietly. I'd like to start a daycare center for unwed mothers like my daughter, so more girls can finish school and pursue their dreams. But that ambition is beyond her. Her body language, her tone of voice, her averted gaze speak louder than her words. I press her, but she demurs with a smile. Let's just see what happens if you win the governor's job, she says. Valerie's house in South Georgia is not too different from the squat red brick house where I grew up on South Street in Gulfport, Mississippi. An oak tree grew out in our front yard, shadowing the front sidewalk, forbidding grass to grow beneath its shade. Pink azaleas bloomed each spring from bushes that flanked the front door. Our rented house and the other set close by teemed with children, all black, all working class. We played in our postage-stamped yards, make believing the fantastical, superhero exploits, cops and robbers. As we got older, we'd talk about moving to New Orleans or living in one of the mansions along the beachfront that lay less than 5 miles away, across the railroad tracks that ran in between our neighborhood and the more wealthy environs. We dreamed of more, while our parents' lives centered around survival and making it from paycheck to paycheck. Instinctively, we understood that more had to be possible, even if we didn't know what to do to get there. These imaginings, these desires, are the roots of ambition. As adults, like Valerie, we tend to edit our desires until they fit our construction of who we're supposed to become. In such a world, I wouldn't dare dream of running for higher office, for mayor or governor or president. At least for now, Valerie sees herself retiring in 20 more years from Piggly Wiggly as a cashier, rather than as a small business owner who helps the community raise its children. From our brief meeting, I could see she had the fire, albeit of a low burn, of a minority leader. She had ambition, she had vision, but she didn't have the faith, and understandably so. Whether we come from working class neighborhoods or grow up comfortably middle class, minorities rarely come of age explicitly thinking about what we want and how to get it. People already in power almost never have to think about whether they belong in the room, much less if they would be listened to once outside. These men, and they are usually men and typically white, do not have to grapple with low expectations based on gender or race or class. Ambition for them begins with reminiscences of old times and older friendships or newer alliances. The ends have already been decided. Only the means are to be discussed. Most potential minority leaders feel the same lack of faith Valerie had, at least at some point in their evolution. We may not know how to get the first job, let alone make it to the big chair. We don't know how to take the leap from accepting our fates to actually changing them, and not just a little, but radically. Then there are those who simply don't know what they want. The drive to achieve burns inside, often without a clear target. We want to be something, but what that is remains hazy. Often we cannot articulate our goals because they lie just beyond the reach of who we're supposed to be. Ambition's scale is irrelevant. What holds us back is not scope, it's fear. And because we don't know what to call our dreams, don't know how to make them happen, or are pretty sure we'll be disappointed, we just stand still. But becoming a minority leader demands that we embrace ambition as our due. Stacey Abram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. As you know, I refer to Mr. Kennedy as Bob Kennedy because I don't want anybody to confuse him with his father, RFK, or Robert F. Kennedy. So I call him Bob Kennedy. And you know, our old buddy Greg Palast has some history with Bob. And he's on the line with us. Isn't that great? In fact, he wrote a piece about it for his website, gregpalast.com, GREGPALAST.com. You can also find a great tweet about it over at Greg_Palast over on Twitter or whatever they call that thing now. Hey, Greg, welcome back to the program.
Glad to be back with you, Tom.
So your piece is titled, I Was on the Phone with RFK Jr. when he lost his mind. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I'm going to be very honest. It's very uncomfortable. Bobby is a very good friend of mine. We co-authored stories for Rolling Stone together with Jesse Jackson. We wrote the #1 best-selling single-issue adult comic book of all time, Steal Back Your Vote. He did a chapter for my book, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, you know, so we spent a lot of time together.
Yeah.
But I was watching, and it's very uncomfortable for me to talk about. The only reason I'm talking about my friend's mental health condition is because he has now decided that he jumped into the presidential campaign despite his mental deficits. You talk about Biden, it's nothing compared to Bobby. He's got real serious problems. And now he's dropped out and endorsed Trump. And I'm sorry, I think that the nation needs to know who is making this endorsement of Trump and who's trying to bend this election that way.
Yeah. No, he and I were colleagues at one point. You know,
that's right. I know that you're a friend of his too.
Yeah, he and Mike had this show, Ring of Fire, and I, you know, he was on my program. I was on his program. We've talked many times. I wouldn't say I have a personal relationship with him like you do, but you know,
well,
this was before he went nuts. I don't know if it's the brain worm or the dead bear or what.
For example, there were several incidents, including where we had a press conference we were supposed to do together. He was in the wrong city. I don't know why. And then I found out that he had just totally forgotten about things I had told him. I did a big story, an investigation for British television and The Guardian about how the Deepwater Horizon, when it blew up 17 months earlier, this story never came out in the U.S. 17 months earlier.
In Europe.
There was an almost identical blowout by a BP rig in the Caspian. Why am I bringing this up with Bobby Kennedy? Because he was involved in getting this story out. I had him on camera. We talked about it at length, and he totally forgot about it. And it caused some real tension. I didn't know what the heck was going on. And this is a constant problem where I'd say something to him. He's brilliant. And then suddenly he'd forget something that just happened a week before or something. And I mean, it might sound minor, but he was totally losing it in our discussions. He couldn't keep track of where we were, what we were doing, and something was wrong. I didn't get it. Now we found out that there literally was a worm in his brain, a real live critter. And, you know, it's terrible. But you add that to the personal traumas he's had. I'm very sympathetic. How many people see their father's head blown apart on national television?
Right, when they're,
but, you know, his reaction
like 12
to that,
years old or something.
Sirhan, a Palestinian who was upset with Bobby Kennedy Sr.'s support for Israel, killed him on national TV, and he's still denied that Sirhan, even though there's the film right on TV, this guy shooting his dad, he's denied it, but now he's gone the other way when he's a presidential candidate, say, we have to wipe out Hamas, the Palestinians are the most coddled people in the world. So it's like almost like now I'm going to get even with the people that applauded my father's killing. But and of course, he spoke to his wife, Mary, who spoke to him just before she committed suicide. And he was blamed by the tabloids for, forcing her, pushing her into suicide. This is cruel, cruel, terrible stuff. Right. And so I understand why someone could be psychologically messed up. But as my partner said to me, you got to stay away from him now because he's going to blow up and you're going to be standing next to him when he does his crazy thing. And then we communicated over. He did successfully taking on Big Pharma and getting mercury out of the MMR vaccine. But unfortunately, they went after him personally. The result was, Tom, that he has this like contrarian streak. So, look, I agree with him. I don't buy much from Big Pharma. I don't buy much from what our government says. Yeah. But you have to give me the proof.
Yeah, no, he sent me a copy of his book, and
there's no proof. He doesn't have.
Reached out to me and asked me to read it, and I did. And I told him, I'm sorry, I can't endorse this.
No, so what's happened is that he is so skeptical of things that he will buy conspiracy theories of the worst order, like that his father was not killed by Sirhan Sirhan.
Yeah.
Because of his contrarianism and his psychological condition. But the problem is he doesn't know where he is sometimes. He's completely lost. It's like when I started talking to him, it was like talking to a 92-year-old in a nursing home. And that's when my partner just said, look, we cannot associate. And the only reason I feel terrible about talking about a friend's mental condition, but he's trying to bend the United States presidential election. Right. That is unacceptable. Bobby, get some help. Don't punish America for your condition, which really needs some serious help.
Yeah, I totally get it. And it's real unfortunate.
It's terrible.
I mean, you know, he's had a rough life, but that doesn't mean that he has to try and take down his country. This endorsement of Trump is just beyond the pale, frankly. I believe pretty much every member of his immediate family has repudiated his position.
Well, it's the final straw. It's not only the anti-vax stuff. People accuse him of being a conspiracy nut. The problem is that he is adopting. Was right about several things we wrote about. Vote suppression, and that Kerry really won the election in 2005 if they didn't disqualify all these black votes. But he made up all these stories about computers flipping names and all this stuff that Donald Trump ultimately picked up.
Yeah.
We don't need. There's enough bad stuff going on out there right now.
Right.
Our governments do lie to us. Big Pharma does lie to us. Corporations lie to us and manipulate our system. But we don't have to make up wacky stories to get to that truth.
No,
Bobby, please get some help and don't take out your mental problems on America. It's horrible that I have to even say this, but I've been biting my tongue.
I'm with you. Greg, if I could change, we've kind of trounced this one. If we could change the topic just a little bit, you have been the guy on the vote stealing and voter intimidation beat, as it were, forever. And the New York Times is reporting that Lydia Martinez, a retired educator who lives in San Antonio, at 6 a.m., police came to her house, and I don't know if they kicked in her door, but they're apparently doing that in Texas right now. She had complained publicly. She's a member of LULAC, the Hispanic group down in Texas.
Organization, yes.
Right. She had complained publicly that she was not being sent mail-in ballots. And they raided her house. And she called up, and we just had at the top of the last hour, we had the director of the Texas LULAC on the program. And he said that he had called her up in tears and said, I can't afford to hire a lawyer to defend myself. And this is an attempt to intimidate Latinos in Texas into not voting. Now, I know a couple of years ago when Ron DeSantis was running for re-election, correct me if I'm wrong on this, he arrested a whole bunch of black people and had them paraded in front of the cameras in chains for, quote, illegally voting. And my recollection, Greg, is that as a consequence of that, in that next election, almost 1 million black people, fewer black people voted than in the previous election.
That's right. And it's very important to know that no one was convicted of illegal voting. They haven't found I only have three cases of illegal voting in Florida in the past decade. And there are 3 Republicans, by the way.
Right.
But it doesn't happen. So here's
this is now going on in Texas.
We are now.
Is this going to go national?
Give me that woman's number. I'm going to call Rodney Ellis, who's the commissioner. He's in our new film, Vigilantes, Inc.
Right.
America's new vote suppression hitmen, which will be premiered in Los Angeles September 8th, hosted by the extraordinary Thom Hartmann. Will be released for general release on September 13. But Rodney Ellis, who runs Houston, is in that film. He's a great lawyer, and he is fighting like crazy these violent attempts to stop people from voting.
Yeah, Ken Paxton, they're kicking in doors all over Texas now, apparently. Right
kicking
now,
in doors. Let me tell you, he was accused of forging 750,000 ballots, which is, I said, at 8 seconds each, that's about 200 years. But anyway, he supposedly forged these ballots. Supposedly, he was accused by Republicans of putting these stolen ballots into an air conditioning repairman's truck. These right-wing vigilantes who are hired by this billionaire, it's not just nutcases, you're talking big money. This billionaire hired these detectives. They ran the guy with the air conditioning truck off the road, almost killed him, pulled him out of his truck with a gun, loaded gun to his head, and said, "Give us those stolen ballots." He goes to the back of the truck, afraid they're going to put a bullet in his head. He opens it up, and there's nothing but air conditioning parts in the back. Right. Thank God the Houston police showed up at that moment. Right. But this is the type of horrific, violent intimidation. And Commissioner Ellis, I'm sure, will be happy to work with the LULAC people in coming back and getting their votes. We saw this in Georgia. We saw this in Arizona. We're seeing this in Wisconsin and even in Michigan. This is real serious stuff. So go to gregpalast.com. And as of today, you can sign up to get your free copy of our film, which will come out. You'll get it when it's in general release in 3 weeks.
That's very cool. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to coming down to Los Angeles and hanging out with you on that. The story is at the top of Raw Story right now. It's titled "Texas Officers Raid House of 87-Year-Old Woman Who Complained About Poor Ballot Access." And then there's a link in that article to the New York Times piece today. I really hope that Ken Paxton does not get away with this. This guy has slipped away from so many, I mean, he's been accused of so many crimes.
Yeah, he's a guy. He's
still the Attorney General.
He's the Attorney General, which is amazing. He was impeached, but they couldn't remove it. But we do have him in our film saying, he stopped Ken Paxton as Attorney General, this Republican, crazy partisan Attorney General, who's committed several crimes. No question that he's been bribed and committed bribery. And I don't say that lightly. But he also said he blocked Houston. He blocked our guy from our film, Rodney Ellis. He blocked Houston from sending out 2.5 million ballots during COVID so people wouldn't have to get in line and die to vote. Send out 2.5, they were mailing out 2.5 million ballots. Ken Paxton stopped the mailing out of ballots during COVID.
Right. This is how Republicans hang on to power.
Said, and this is a quote, if we hadn't stopped those ballots, Donald Trump would not have been elected. He would have lost Texas.
Wow.
I mean,
wow. Hang on just a second.
Basically
is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greg, I'm sorry I'm out of time, but you can read all about it at gregpalast.com. Greg, thanks a lot for dropping by.
You're the best, Tom. Thank you.
Good talking with you. I'll see you in a week or two. And welcome back. Let's see who's been on hold the longest here. Doug in Fort Collins, Colorado. Hey, Doug, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good.
Love your
what's
show,
up?
love your callers and your guests.
Thank you.
We've been talking about how when it was to be Trump and Biden, they agreed to rules, and that was the mics would be turned off.
Correct.
You've hit on that subject earlier.
Right.
I'm under the impression it's Harris wants to change it.
That's correct.
Because she wants to hear Trump ramble on and throw insults because she's quick on her feet and she can respond.
Exactly right.
And it's Trump's campaign that wants to back out because they want the mic silenced.
That's
so when
right.
they're saying it's all because, the rule change, it's Trump campaign doesn't want Trump to be able to ad lib and make a fool of himself. That's my impression.
Well, that's a possibility. I think that what's going on is that Trump has been using this strategy that we had Mehdi Hassan on the program. He wrote a book about this, how to debate anybody and win, I think was the title, or something close to that. And he talked about this strategy called the Gish Gallop, which is where it's also called the fire hose of lies strategy, where when you're debating somebody, in one single sentence, you put in at least 3 or 4 lies, ideally 4 or 5 lies in one single sentence, and then your opponent has to pick which one they want to rebut in the very limited time that they have, which means that the other lies never get rebutted, and so they become part of the record. And so if Harris's mic is muted, he can get away with that. If her mic is not muted, she can simply interrupt him at every point in that sentence and say, lie, 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 that's another lie. And he's afraid. I think he's afraid of that, because that's the way you blow up that strategy. Is you have to check it in real time. You can't respond to it afterwards.
And she's quick on her feet. She'll lead him alive in a debate. So.
Yep. You and I both know it, and so does he, and that's why I think he's running. Doug, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you.
Response about the voting in Texas. I always spell Texas with 2 S's.
Yeah.
So
There you go. There you go. Thank you, Doug. Morris in Long Beach, California. Hey, Morris, what's up?
Guess who has lost his mojo, Tommy? Guess who's lost his fastball? And guess who has lost the ability to threaten people? Donald Trump. All right? There's a new sheriff in town. We got a new climate. We've changed from a climate of cruelty to hope. I like you used the word cruelty, and you had an earlier call, Kwame, but you used the word hope. And then I think that's what's going on right now. Yeah. And if Trump was to show up and debate the prosecutor, which I wouldn't do, I'd be sick that day, like I used to do when I was a kid in elementary school. But anyway, if he was to show up, all she got to ask him is this, Tom: do you respect the rule of law? Do you appreciate our justice system? Then why did you pardon Sheriff Arpaio?
Right. And a bunch of other criminals as well. I mean, you know. Yeah, but
that's a political thing too, because the Latinos might hear that and say, hey, she's trying to do something for us, because, you know, we get every vote we can get. But anyway, Tom, I just want you to know it's a new climate. And when your boy goes to court on the 18th, it's going to be a lot different than it was, let's say, 3 months ago. Yeah. Remember what the climate was 3 months? Yeah. So now, Judge Rosales, he don't have to fear nothing now. Yeah. He really, really doesn't, because all the soldiers are locked up in jail. And nobody's going to do a shootout with the FBI today. He don't have that much going for him. Yeah. So anyway, he's lost the mojo, lost the fastball, and he's lost his ability to threaten people. So maybe we'll now see justice in America, Tom.
Spot on, Morris. You always bring the goods to this program. Thank you for the call.
Talk to you later.
Good talking to you. 22 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back with you. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Republicans all over the country have been doing everything they can to stop people from voting, and the real pioneer in this area has been Georgia and their Governor Brian Kemp. He has been purging people from the voting rolls like crazy, and of course they use this phony thing of voter fraud. There's voter fraud out there, to try to make it much harder to re-register, to register in the first place, or to even vote. I mean, you know, there's mile-long lines to vote and things like that. But now they've got a new scam. They put up a website saying you can delete your voter registration here. Now, who's going to do that? I don't think anybody, but, you know, it's there. The only thing is you need to know somebody's social security number to delete their voter registration. So for a whole hour on Monday of the week that they put this thing up, for a whole hour, the entire voting database, all 6 million Georgia voters, including their social security numbers and driver's licenses, was posted publicly on that website. So now anybody can delete votes. There's a whole piece about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Turn off that channel, it's filling you with lies, spreading fear and anger beneath those polished ties. They twist the truth and bend the facts, it's all a grand disguise. Don't let them rot your mind away, don't buy their alibis. Don't listen to Fox, so-called news. It's misleading, it's wrong, it's designed to confuse. It will watch your brain and make you mean. Turn off the noise and say the truth unseen. They profit from division and from the seeds of hate. They turn our friends to enemies and twist the public fate. They shout with indignation while hiding what is true. Don't let them take your kindness. Don't let them poison you. Don't listen to Fox.
There you go, 24 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. A former FBI informant, Joe Moore, has written a new book it's called White Robes and Broken Badges. And it's about how the Klan has been recruiting law enforcement for years. I mean, probably for over a century. He infiltrated the Klan down in Florida over a decade-long period in the 2010s. He lived near Gainesville. He became the Grand Night Hawk in that local Klan group. He was the Klan security official. He disrupted a plot by 3 Klansmen who were prison guards to murder a black former inmate. He brought down 2 major Klan figures on behalf of the FBI, Grand Dragon Jamie Ward and Exalted Cyclops Charles Newcomb. He writes, "In my first tour inside the Klan, the nation's first domestic terrorist group founded more than 150 years ago, I foiled a plot to assassinate then-candidate Barack Obama, only to witness the Klan use his election as a rallying cry and recruiting tool that ignited a firestorm within the white nationalist right." And, spot on. I recall that well. He says, after serving in foreign authoritarian countries, nothing I witnessed in them scares me as much as what we're facing at home now. Should we be afraid? With the 2024 election looming and democracy itself on the ballot, the answer is yes, we should be very afraid. The foreword of the book, this isn't just some crackpot guy. Jamie Raskin wrote the foreword of this book. And he writes that Moore, quote, shows how the Klan remains a critical entry point and organizing force for violent white nationalism in America. He tried to tell Florida law enforcement about the Klan's infiltration of state police and local police departments, and the DeSantis administration had no interest in this. In fact, state officials came out and said there was no information that the issue was any more broad than one case. He said, but I had a list of officers who were active members and actively recruiting other people and sending active Klan members into the law enforcement hiring process as well. But Ron DeSantis didn't want to hear it. After all, there have been Klan members who have shown up at DeSantis rallies, right? He thinks that about 1/3 of all Klan members are also members of other right-wing organizations as well. Scary stuff.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And also, about 20% of those arrested during the January 6th Capitol attack are believed to have some relationship to U.S. law enforcement. Grim stuff.
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Minority Leader, How to Lead from the Outside and Make Real Change by Stacey Abrams. This is from chapter 1, although the introduction is fascinating too, where she talks about, Rhodes scholarships and stuff, but this is chapter 1. I sit in the living room, a cozy space, warm in the early summer. I'm perched on the edge of a sofa next to Valerie, the home's owner, a lovely black woman in her late 40s. Across from us, seated close together on a wide settee meant for one, are her 2 children, a son and a daughter. Politicians rarely visit their streets, which are nestled in a poorer community in South Georgia. Valerie beams with pride that both her children are headed to college in the fall. David, 17, plans to study criminology. Maya, 18, her belly round with her first child, intends to become a middle school teacher. Both newly graduated from high school, Maya will give birth in mere weeks and begin college months later, an unwed teen mother. Her intended school is more than 3 hours north of her home, so her mother will raise her newborn baby while she starts her freshman year. Valerie speaks matter-of-factly about the coming challenge, raising a new child just as hers leaves the nest. Still, she is determined that both her children pursue college degrees that she never received. Maya, the mother-to-be, wonders how she'll do so far away from home and her baby. Yet in the next breath, she explains how college will be the best for her and her child. Their future success rests upon her. I've come to their home as part of my campaign for governor, so I asked Valerie what she expects of someone like me. What can I do to help make lives like hers better? In her soft voice, she replies, she just wants options for financial aid for her children. They will succeed, she says, if they can afford to stay in school. As I look around the modest home passed down through the generations, I understand both the pride and the desperation tangled in her response. She got them through and has given them the tools to carve out better lives for themselves. We chat more about the worries she has lived with all those years, our discussion turning to the crime and poverty in their neighborhood. Then I ask Valerie what she wants. At first, all I get in response is a quizzical look to suggest I need to reconsider my bid for higher office. Or that suggests. I repeat, what do you want for you? What secret dream do you have for yourself? Her confused expression turns to one of surprise. I don't know, she tells me. I've been a cashier at the Piggly Wiggly for 20 years. You must want something, I probe, something you'd like to do for you. A daycare, she admits quietly. I'd like to start a daycare center for unwed mothers like my daughter, so more girls can finish school and pursue their dreams. But that ambition is beyond her. Her body language, her tone of voice, her averted gaze speak louder than her words. I press her, but she demurs with a smile. Let's just see what happens if you win the governor's job, she says. Valerie's house in South Georgia is not too different from the squat red brick house where I grew up on South Street in Gulfport, Mississippi. An oak tree grew out in our front yard, shadowing the front sidewalk, forbidding grass to grow beneath its shade. Pink azaleas bloomed each spring from bushes that flanked the front door. Our rented house and the other set close by teemed with children, all black, all working class. We played in our postage-stamped yards, make believing the fantastical, superhero exploits, cops and robbers. As we got older, we'd talk about moving to New Orleans or living in one of the mansions along the beachfront that lay less than 5 miles away, across the railroad tracks that ran in between our neighborhood and the more wealthy environs. We dreamed of more, while our parents' lives centered around survival and making it from paycheck to paycheck. Instinctively, we understood that more had to be possible, even if we didn't know what to do to get there. These imaginings, these desires, are the roots of ambition. As adults, like Valerie, we tend to edit our desires until they fit our construction of who we're supposed to become. In such a world, I wouldn't dare dream of running for higher office, for mayor or governor or president. At least for now, Valerie sees herself retiring in 20 more years from Piggly Wiggly as a cashier, rather than as a small business owner who helps the community raise its children. From our brief meeting, I could see she had the fire, albeit of a low burn, of a minority leader. She had ambition, she had vision, but she didn't have the faith, and understandably so. Whether we come from working class neighborhoods or grow up comfortably middle class, minorities rarely come of age explicitly thinking about what we want and how to get it. People already in power almost never have to think about whether they belong in the room, much less if they would be listened to once outside. These men, and they are usually men and typically white, do not have to grapple with low expectations based on gender or race or class. Ambition for them begins with reminiscences of old times and older friendships or newer alliances. The ends have already been decided. Only the means are to be discussed. Most potential minority leaders feel the same lack of faith Valerie had, at least at some point in their evolution. We may not know how to get the first job, let alone make it to the big chair. We don't know how to take the leap from accepting our fates to actually changing them, and not just a little, but radically. Then there are those who simply don't know what they want. The drive to achieve burns inside, often without a clear target. We want to be something, but what that is remains hazy. Often we cannot articulate our goals because they lie just beyond the reach of who we're supposed to be. Ambition's scale is irrelevant. What holds us back is not scope, it's fear. And because we don't know what to call our dreams, don't know how to make them happen, or are pretty sure we'll be disappointed, we just stand still. But becoming a minority leader demands that we embrace ambition as our due. Stacey Abram.
Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com.
Driving down this winding road with the sun on my face.
Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Gregory in Farmington, Minnesota. Hey, Gregory, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, good afternoon, Tom. So you have kind of a standing bet with your Republican guests to name anything that the Republicans have done exclusively for the middle class, and you give them $100. I don't going back.
No, I said I'd send him a book. But yeah, I've had that.
Okay.
It's been going on for 20
But you've
years.
had no taker. Is there anything in Project 2025 anywhere, and I don't know it's a big read, that anything that would exclusively help the middle class?
Not to the best of my knowledge. Do you know of something?
Yeah.
What?
No, I don't. I was just, I mean, I stumped people with your statement before. Name me one thing that the Republicans have done just for the middle class in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And they can't do it.
No, you can't.
I don't think 2025 has anything either.
I would be surprised if it did, because, you know, I mean, it's written by plutocrats. You know, it's of, by, and for the billionaires in America. So, of course.
Where would I go to? Well, anyway, I kind of knew that would be the answer.
There's three. If you want more information on Project 2025, if that was your where do I go question, go over to Substack.com and plug in Project 2025, and you will find 3 newsletters that have Project 2025 in their title, and and all 3, and they're all free. And all three of them are doing a pretty damn good job of explaining it. Also, Ali Velshi every weekend, has been just taking one chapter at a time and deconstructing the thing. Lawrence O'Donnell has been all over it. So, yeah, there's some pretty thorough stuff. So, Gregory, thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. Thanks for listening to Sirius XM.
Thank you.
Yep. Bill in Richmond, Virginia. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, just fine. Beautiful day here on the West Coast. I understand. And so on the East Coast. Listen, I was telling your screener, he and I have become kind of friends. But since 1992, it's the last time I voted for a Democrat for president.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna vote for Vice President Harris. But I was reading an article today in the Washington Post. There were two articles, because I'm assuming you probably read the Post.
I do.
Was that when you talk about voter tamp down or whatnot, their position, it may have been an op-ed, that what the Democrats did to RFK Jr. was the same thing. Basically, when he was polling 15 to 20%, which would have gotten him on the debate stage under any of the normal rules, that earlier debate mainly kept him out. And so from that point on, it kind of minimized him as a candidate.
Yeah, I don't know that he was ever polling 15 to 20%. I've never seen any of his polls. I mean, there might have been a couple of state polls where he was hitting those numbers, but not nationally.
Well, I heard the same thing on Michael Superconish, and he's kind of middle of the road when he brought up the same topic about that there was a thing. But why? I mean, the Republicans Trump is going to win. But the Republicans let anybody that wanted to debate or how they want to do it. And that, to me, is kind of a strange thing.
I don't recall Trump debating anybody in the primary, in a Republican primary.
I don't think it showed up for the debate. That was more the case.
There were no Republican primary debates, were there? Did I miss something?
The only debate would have been not in what you call the strict sense of the word.
No, Trump took over the Republican Party and then just said, "Okay, I, me. It's he's the candidate." I mean,
but I do have one other concern.
I mean, Nikki Haley was kind of campaigning against him, sort of, but I don't recall him debating her. Maybe I missed it.
Well, yeah, what's a possibility? Because that, like in politics, going backwards, it's almost like years like going forward is.
No, but I don't, he didn't keep, Bob Kennedy wasn't, allowed to debate on the Republican side any more than anybody else was. Donald Trump just didn't do debates.
But let me ask you another question, though, is this. Do you think that Vice President Harris is going to finally come out and actually take interviews or press conferences or something? Because the reason I'm going to vote for the positions that she currently has now, to me, are very middle of the road. A lot of them are.
Yeah.
Much slower than 5 years ago. But nobody's had a chance to really, and politics is that kind of game. I don't care which side of the fence you're on.
I get that this Fox News hit on her, but I have seen at least 3 times in the last 2 weeks when she's, walked up to a press line and engaged the press for 10, 15, 20 minutes. She has been very clear about what she wants to do. Her policy positions are pretty explicit, as you said. I think they're relatively moderate, frankly. They're not as progressive as I would like, but I think she's been there. I get that she hasn't sat down with the New York Times, and Mr. Schultzberger is, angry about that. But I think that's probably wise, actually, because they're just, the New York Times, sadly, and the Washington Post, too, under Jeff Bezos, the Mr. Anti-Union, have both become kind of, clickbait factories. They're just looking for, they just want to do gotcha interviews and things like that. I think she's doing a very good job of communicating to the public.
Well, like I said, I hope some more comes out, because as much as I really dislike Trump, and that really is what it's boiled down to, it's not one of these. I'm like the country's too split in the vote right now. The polling's showing it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't like something on the other side, and they aren't all extreme. But I do like to have, I like clarification on policy.
Yeah. I think she's laying it out, Bill, and I'm sure that there will be more coming. The Democratic Party does produce platforms, and there is a Democratic Party platform, and she is running on that. And the Republican Party platform, you'll recall, in the last election, 2020, was literally whatever Donald Trump says, that's what we agree to. And this time around, it's pathetic.
Yeah. I want to see that again. Yeah. I mean, I don't like to be that freeform, so to speak.
No, I get it. I get it.
Thank you for my call. I appreciate it.
Sure enough. Anytime, Bill. Good talking to you. Rick in Cartersville, Georgia. Hey, Rick, what's on your mind today?
Yes, Tom, I think that Donald Trump deserves a little more recognition than what he's getting. When you tell 162 lies and distortion in 64 minutes, that's quite a feat. I would think that it would have been mighty near impossible even for Trump.
Yeah, where's the Guinness Book of World Records when you need them?
Right. And, in view of that, that it has been said that he has told over 30,000 lies the 4 years that he was in the White House.
Right. The Washington Post documented that.
Yeah, but, does that actually include the time he was on the golf course? He spent more time there than he did anywhere else.
Yeah, roughly every 3 days, Donald Trump took an entire day to play golf. This is after criticizing Barack Obama for playing golf, just a handful of times during his presidency.
Right. In fact, that I guess in Donald Trump's view, that one reason I guess that he might say that Kamala Harris is not qualified for president is because I've never seen her on the golf course.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to see her on the golf course. I want to see her doing the work of government, which is what she's really, really good at. Trump should, just confine himself to his shabby golf motel and wife cemetery and leave the rest of us alone, Rick?
Well, I'm hoping that, they'll have a live watch party, election watch party at Cell Block C in Attica State Prison.
Hang on. Judge Merchan is coming in about 3 weeks, so we'll find out. Yeah. Rick, I got to move along, but thanks for the call. Spot on.
Okay.
Good talking to you. Patty in Vancouver, Washington. Hey, Patty, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I've been listening to you for a long time, first-time caller.
Well, thank you.
What I'm concerned about is you've mentioned as the last couple of weeks about the billions of dollars waiting in reserve for ads for the Trump campaign. Well, it was interesting because yesterday I was online just looking at a recipe video, which I do often. I love to cook. And while I was watching this video, 3 interruptions of Trump ads in one recipe video.
Really?
Yep, and it had, this is Donald Trump, and how they start these ads out, and I was just, had to listen for like 3 or 4, and then you could skip it, but still, it interrupted 3 different times.
This is on YouTube?
I think they've already started.
Yeah, this was on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not surprised.
Yeah, they've already started, so... My hope would be that they overkill it so much that people just get sick of it.
Yeah, I think
those that.
I suspect the people are more hardened in their opinions than conventional wisdom would dictate. I think the number of undecided voters is probably much smaller than most people realize.
Well, one would hope so, but I just wanted to put that out there and see if anybody else has noticed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Patty. Yeah, we'll see if anybody calls in.
Thank you, Tom, for your show. We love it.
Thank you. Always great talking with you. Thank you, Patty. Appreciate the call. First call, actually. 45 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, fair and only slightly unbalanced. And welcome back. Shay in Jacksonville, Florida. Hey, Shay, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Hey, everyone. So happy for last week's Democratic National Convention. It was amazing.
It really
Watched
was.
it every single night.
Yeah.
Yes. So the question that you were regarding the person who debated no one was the Senator Ossoff and Purdue race in Georgia.
Right.
So that happened. And then I had a friend did John
Ossoff debate an empty chair? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Ah, I vaguely remember that. Thank you, Shay, for refreshing my memory. Thank you.
You're so welcome. No worries. You don't know how many conversations we have with me on this side of the screen. So,
I get it.
So I have a friend whose wife ran for the school board, and in Clay County here in Florida, and she very well respected, had a lot of backing from teachers, et cetera. So I reached out to, after not seeing the results posted, just waiting last Tuesday, never saw him. The next morning, reached out, asked him, what happened. He said, unfortunately, she lost. So I asked him, of course, said sorry, asked him what was the percentage. He said, well, here's the thing. When the polls first closed with 100% of the precincts reporting, she was in second place with 25%, which meant she would have went to the general election. Then they claimed there was a statewide blackout to the system. And he put, A few minutes later, it reposted with her in last place at 22%. Whoa. Somehow the person in last place mysteriously got 3,000 votes in 15 minutes. So he says, I guess that's that. The person that was in the lead was a Moms for Liberty regional or something, her son. Thankfully, the second person, he's a Republican, but he's a good guy. My friend said. The second thing is, I want to say that instead of the Democrats, Vice President Harris campaign saying we are underdogs, I believe we should take the offensive and remind Americans that Democrats have won the popular vote how many years in a row, and how
ever since 1988.
Yes, and just remind Americans how intentional the Republicans have been in gerrymandering and subverting our votes, and just remind everyone that we need to stay very united to get our votes heard and the will of the people recognized.
Yeah, you're right.
Just like here in Jacksonville, we have Mayor Donna Deegan. She's a progressive and the first female mayor of Jacksonville. Cool. That was elected last year. They're pushing back on a lot of her policies, such as even she had a set aside of $10 million for urban housing, like for affordable housing, and they just shut that down in the budget talk. So we just have to be vigilant.
Yeah, and we have to show up. I mean, that's the key.
Yes.
We've got to show up. We've got to vote. Shay, thank you. Thank you so much for the information.
You're so welcome. And thank you for everything you do and your staff.
My pleasure. Yeah, we're all having a good time here. Shay, thank you so much. It's 49 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in 60 seconds, so stay tuned. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Billionaire Dreams, Middle-Class Nightmares. That's the title of a daily takeover at HartmannReport.com. And it's about how J.D. Vance and Donald Trump both, when they rolled out their campaigns, started talking about the American. So which raises the question, what is the American dream when Republicans talk about it? What do they mean? I mean, we know when Democrats talk about the American dream, they're talking about, a good middle-class union job where you can buy a home and live safely and buy a car and take a vacation and put your kids through school. Republicans, though, if you look into it, when they talk about the American dream, in fact, J.D. Vance talks about this, to them it means getting rich beyond the dreams of King Midas, owning multiple mansions, having a private jet, employing private security, being able to buy your own judges for the Supreme Court and buy your own politicians, and paying taxes.
Not so much. Only 8%, the average billionaire in America. I'd go through all the issues that separate these two. You can read about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Do you feel that spark inside, burning bright and true? A call to stand, a voice to raise, it's all up to you. In the heart of the chaos.
Welcome back. 9 minutes before the hour. Richard in Highland Park, California. Hey, Richard, what's on your mind today?
Oh, what's up? It's such a big deal with Greg Palast, but I couldn't hear the thing because here in KPFK land, you're not on at that hour. Anyhow, they have determined this stun group that I talked to you about. I looked them up. They're just fascinating. And the plan is to, in honor of Jimmy Carter, to get a Jimmy Carter Center or a Carter Family Center in every state, have Greg Palast and Stacey Abrams run the things to get them together so that we have a complete 100% proper count in every state at the federal level when we vote for president.
Yeah, good luck with that. We just need to have legislation passed, the John Lewis Voting Rights Enhancement Act, that says that vote explicitly that voting is actually a right, not a privilege in the United States, that the Supreme Court is wrong every time they've said it's a privilege and not a right, that corrects those Supreme Court decisions, and that strips the Supreme Court of their authority to strike this law down. We just, it just needs to be explicit.
They've got a thing to go after the Supreme Court, starting with Sam Alito. I mean, I'm telling you, you should look these people up. I think they're online. STUN. Mm-hmm. Check them out, man. They are incredible.
I will do it, Richard. Thanks a lot. Angelique in Chicago. Hey, Angelique, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Hope you can hear me okay.
Just fine.
Long-time listener, first time calling in.
Thank you.
So, question for you, since you're the expert and I learn a lot from you, about the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. There's been talk about Justice Sotomayor, her health, and whether or not she either might step down or people are thinking under Biden she should. My concern is whether or not Biden has, like, I don't know if you remember with Obama, he was denied the opportunity with more than a year left in his term to appoint a Supreme Court justice.
Correct.
Would that be the same case? Could the likes of Mike Johnson, not Mitch McConnell, but, stop Biden in the event that she does step down for health reasons or other reasons?
The House has no say in the matter. The judges are only confirmed by the Senate, and right now Democrats control the Senate by one vote. But if John Tester loses in Montana, then it's possible that because West Virginia is already going to go Republican, now that Joe Manchin is retiring and Jim Justice, the governor of the state, is running for that seat, and he became a Republican. So it's all going to probably come down to Montana. If the Republicans can gain control of the Senate, then they could block President Harris from appointing a good replacement, or force her into doing something like, what happened with Obama, which was, Obama picked Merrick Garland because he was the middle-of-the-road guy. In fact, he was recommended to Obama by Orrin Hatch, the right-wing Republican senator from Utah, as somebody that all the Republicans would vote for, and that's why Obama, nominated Merrick Garland. Rather than a genuine progressive or even a genuine Democrat.
Exactly.
And so it's going to, if we lose the Senate, it's going to be real difficult with regard to the Supreme Court and with regard to the courts in general. So
to that end, would you not suggest, but I mean, we can't make a justice step down. Like, I love RB, I love Ruth, but I feel like her time to have stepped down was definitely...
She should have stepped down much earlier.
Yeah.
She should not have done
So if Sotomayor does it, and based on what you're saying the composition is, we'd have a better chance under Biden before the end of the year versus under Harris with these races in limbo, or no?
Well, yeah, actually, possibly. I suppose it's possible. I would guess, though, that if first of all, we don't know if Sonia Sotomayor actually wants to step down. I mean, she's a type 1 diabetic, and so that and
the sophistication of monitoring insulin and administering insulin pumps and these little things you can wear on your arm that tell you what your blood sugar is. They've become very, very sophisticated now, so that type 1 diabetes is not. It doesn't wreck your health as easily as it did just 20 years ago when you'd experience these wild blood sugar swings.
Yes.
So
you're so right about that.
She may be in good health, and she might be fine for another 5 or 10 years, for all we know. Clarence, she's only 70. Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito are 74 and 73, as I recall. So they're in their 70s anyway. So they definitely want a Republican. I think that's one of the reasons that they're pushing so hard to give Trump immunity and everything else. Angelique, I've got to run. I'm sorry. Thank you for the call. And thanks for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag. You're it. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself, the people around you, and stay safe.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
And Project 2025 is pretty grim stuff, but there's a number of legislators who are, already putting into place some of its provisions, particularly at the state level. But here we've got Joe Manchin and Republican Senator John Barrasso, who, by the way, is linked to Project 2025. They are the chair and the ranking member of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Joe Manchin, whose family owns a coal company. He's a multi-millionaire because of his coal company. And in fact, he used his political clout years ago to keep open a coal plant that used the